You take your seats. With the ones in the back, please take their seats. We started the meeting. Take your conversations outside, please.
Craig.
Hey, Craig.
Craig, did you go back in the back?
Be sure the speaker's on back there. Carrie, is there any changes to the agenda?
There's a revised agenda at your desk with one additional item, item number 15.
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Motion second. All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. I need approval of the June 15th and the June 22nd. We'll vote on those separately, but the minutes of both June 15th and June 22nd, if there's any changes or additions, I need to know that at this time.
I have a couple of changes on the June 15th agenda, minutes.
Okay, and what are those changes?
In the West Nashville, where it says West Nashville 8B, right now it says remove T4 Community Center policy from Nashville State Community College on White Bridge. And what we actually did is we changed from major institutional and we designated it as T4 Community Center. So we actually ended up with T4 Community Center policy. And then on D, the policy for West Nashville in our minutes from June 15th, it says remove T4 Community Center policy from the Nashville State Community College on White Bridge, when in fact it should say that we changed from major institutional and we designated it as T4 Community Center. And then in 8D, where it says bridge over the creek at Charlotte Pike at I-40, that was discussing widening the bridge at Charlotte. And then the other component of that presentation was to restripe the ramps on and off I-40 to improve safety. It was minor to change, but I just wanted to note it for the record.
Okay. Is there a motion to, go ahead.
Well, we need to review those changes. First I've heard of it, and so we need to go back and take a look
We'll
at those.
just defer the approval, or the changes on the June 22nd also, or just 15th? Okay, we'll defer the approval of the June 15th meetings till staff's had time to review that on the tape. Is there a motion on June 22nd, 2015 minutes to approve, or if there's any changes, need to know now? Need a motion second if you want to approve them.
So moved.
Motion second to approve the minutes of June 22nd, 2015. Any change or additions? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? The June 22nd, 2015 minutes are now official. Council members, I think I saw Council Lady Allen. Not in here. Other, Peter, you want to speak? Okay. Mr. Glover?
Yes, I'm going to speak. Thank you.
Any other council members, if you'd raise your hand, I don't see any back there, but don't intentionally want to miss you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. I stand today in support of the Villas project that the Batson Company is wanting to build in my district. Couple of references. Exactly what they propose has been built less than half a mile in the Bridgewater subdivision. And so they're merely bringing in an exceptional product, in my opinion. And there's a couple of things that I want to make sure that I'm clear on. I've talked to several neighbors in the area, and we had one community meeting already, going to have one more after you guys vote today. But the connectivity to Smotherman is an absolute no. I mean, the community does not want that. And so I stand in support with the community on that. Second of all, there's fear that these may be rental units, and I've spoken with Mr. Batson. These will not be rental units, first of all. Second of all, they can actually have it put it in the HOA, and there can be a prohibition against these becoming rental units down the road. So again, I stand in support of it, and I hope that you will support it as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other council members noted wishing to speak that I've overlooked? Seeing none, then the ones that didn't speak be allowed to speak later on. Nashville Next update, are we getting that?
We are.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners. Greg Claxton with the Planning Department. I'll be giving you your first Nashville Next implementation update, talking about capital improvements planning. As you know, the charter requires that Planning Commission recommend a prioritized list of capital improvements each year to the Mayor and Metro Council. With the adoption of Nashville Next, we've begun working on improving the planning process for capital projects to promote, obviously, more effective and efficient spending, greater transparency, and alignment with long-term community goals. Throughout Nashville Next, we presented a few different ways of understanding and visualizing the condition of Nashville's infrastructure. None of these quite capture everything completely well, but they both paint a picture of kind of need for long-term capital planning and coordination. First, we showed our future needs over the next 5 years, starting in 2012, of about $4.8 billion in capital projects, compared to spending over the prior 5 years of about $1.2 billion. We'll see in a moment that gap can be a long-term issue. We'll also see a little bit later on that there are some concerns about how well that captures all of our needs. Second, at the start of Nashville Next, the Music City Infrastructure Report was issued. This was a group of outside folks looking in at the city's infrastructure and assessing it. We don't agree with all of these ratings, but they also paint a picture of some areas of concern, some areas where we're doing well, that just provide a different perspective on some of our needs for the future. A couple of things that I want to highlight is where infrastructure needs come from. First, all of Nashville's very extensive capital assets degrade over time through use or just age. The chart on the left shows performance over time, and you can see once you hit a certain point, you degrade very quickly. The chart on the right shows how you can extend the life of infrastructure through regular maintenance. Of course, as you defer maintenance for longer and longer, it gets more and more expensive to restore the functioning of a particular piece of infrastructure. The other side is simply keeping up with population growth or raising levels of service. This is an example from the 2008 Parks Master Plan, showing in yellow areas of the county that have a surplus of different kinds of parks, and then areas of the county in pink that have a deficit. Obviously, this is a little out of date, but it just conveys the idea that as you grow, if you're going to continue to maintain a constant level of service or increase service, you need to expand your infrastructure, whether that's parks, roads, sewer, or what have you. As we've gone through Nashville Next, a couple of things have become very clear. Infrastructure needs are very different based on your location, and that has a lot of ramifications for the capital improvements budget. One of the big things that Nashville Next is building on in terms of supporting the community is a continued shift to infill. However, that poses some issues for capital projects, greater difficulty in acquiring land and facilities, particularly the cost, more complications in maintaining or upgrading facilities, and then both of those combine to really increase the need to co-locate facilities or coordinate infrastructure work. At the same time, we do expect continued growth in suburban areas. Some of that will take the form of retrofitting older suburban areas, which has a lot of same issues as the infill. But then on the other side, we also need to match infrastructure investments as new greenfield development happens. And when we adopted Nashville Next, we had some discussion about our infrastructure deficiency areas program, and an action in Nashville Next recommends expanding that to a broader view of the county. So that's another thing we'll have to coordinate with the capital improvement process. We've been working a lot with this year's capital improvement budget to try to get our hands around everything that's going on within it. This chart shows the cost of CIB projects per year. If one project extends across multiple years, takes 3 years to build, it shows up in each year. What you'll see is that the budget is heavily weighted towards the very first year of the plan. What that means is that the out years are primarily used to track multi-year projects. projects. If it takes 3 years to build a new school, that cost shows up in all 3 of those years. What it means is we're not using the capital improvements budget right now as a tool for long-term planning and coordination. A lot of that long-term planning is happening by individual departments. They tend to have a good sense of their long-term needs, but we don't have a place right now where all of that comes together and we can see how those needs overlap. Another issue with the current CIB that we're going to be working with over the next year or two is that some of the projects have an unclear status. So out of about 630 projects, 400 were resubmitted from a prior budget as not yet started. You'll see on the chart, about 100 of those were originally submitted prior to 2005. It's not clear how many of those are still relevant. We don't know for sure that they're not relevant, but one of the things we'll be working with departments on over the coming years, over the coming year or two, is really trying to separate which ones are still needed and which ones can get dropped. We've got a tremendous opportunity right now. Not only is there a great deal of community energy over the adoption of Nashville Next, but the finance department is updating their budgeting software. They're actually overhauling their entire system. That's great news for us because it's much easier to coordinate kind of the things that we can ask departments to submit to us through budget system. If we can work with them as they create it rather than going back and trying to add new things or retrofit an older system. We also have some prior work that planning staff did in 2011 and 2012 that gives us a really solid foundation already for making some of these assessments, and we're going to build on that. When we look to see how projects align with Nashville Next, there's 2 big things that we're looking for. First is how many of the guiding principles are they supporting, and we'll be developing criteria so we know exactly what we mean when a project expands accessibility or champions the environment. And then the other thing is how well does it align with our overall growth and preservation concept map, the areas that we want to preserve or the areas that we want to grow. In addition to those 2, the plan also proposes a range of projects. We've got several transportation projects from the long-range transit corridors, as well as countywide and community plan priorities for walking projects, biking projects, and street projects. We also worked with a small number of departments to look out 25 years to see what their sense of their needs were, so we could start, seeing what does it look like to actually plan out that far. We've worked with libraries, fire, and water and sewer on this. This was a fairly simple exercise. It's not a terribly extensive thing, but it gives us, we think, a good foundation for working with other departments to do a similar look ahead, so we can get a sense of where there are opportunities for coordination. We're developing our process right now. A couple of key things that we're working on. First is, like I said, we're coordinating with finance on their new system. We're developing a public involvement strategy. We want to continue to work with departments to understand their plans and needs, and we want to develop these criteria for assessing capital projects for urgent health and safety needs, alignment with Nashville Next, and mayor and council priorities. We're also developing kind of a publicly viewable way to map proposed projects and see how they connect to kind of infrastructure needs and areas through a development support system. This will be a multi-year process to get fully underway, but our goal is to have some aspect of all of these different pieces in the first year, in next year's capital improvements budget. At your retreat, we're looking forward to working with you to figure out the level of involvement and oversight that the Planning Commission wants to have in this, whether it's regular updates at these hearings, the occasional work session, or a subcommittee. And then last, I just want to give you a sense of the timing for this next year. We're working on the process development now, using the current CIB as our sort of test sounding board. We'll be doing department outreach later this fall, doing some public engagement probably in October and November. For this year, this will probably weigh a little bit more heavily towards education and outreach, with a little bit of involvement and engagement, but we really want to kind of build the expertise among the community in, sort of understanding how capital projects relate to long-range plans. In January, there's a formal kickoff for CIB. We will have been working with departments for a couple months at that point, but that's when they start submitting projects. Those projects, per the charter, are due in mid-February. In mid-April, your recommendations are due to the mayor, and then by May 15th, the mayor's recommendations are due to council. We look forward to working on this with you, and I'm happy to take questions. Which one? Sure. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Carrie, tell me items that have been requested to be deferred or withdrawn.
There are 2 items requested for deferral. The first is item number 2, 2015 CP 000-001. It's on page 4 of your agenda. It's the Bordeaux Whites Creek Community Plan Amendment. This is a request to amend the Bordeaux Whites Creek Community Plan 2015 update by changing community character policies for properties within 11 areas deferred from the June 22nd, 2015 Metro Planning Commission hearing to adopt Nashville Next. The staff recommendation is to reopen the public hearing and defer to the November 12th, 2015 Planning Commission meeting to provide the community and the property owners additional time to study the proposed special policies and to allow time for an amendment to the subdivision regulations that will guide development within rural policies to track concurrently. Item number 8 on your agenda, 2015 S-083-001, on page 5 of your agenda, is the John Hill property. It's a request for final plat approval to create 4 lots on property located at 7650 Sawyer Brown Road. Staff's recommendation is to defer to the August 27th, 2015 Planning Commission meeting.
Commissioners, you've heard the request that item 2 and number 8 be deferred. Is there a motion to accept that request? Motion second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Those 2 items have now been deferred. Ready for items that be approved on consent.
Chairman, if I might ask the commission, I know that during our work session there was some discussion of also going ahead and allowing for a public hearing on that matter, even though we've had a public hearing and closed it before, because there's so many changes to it. And what I would ask to do is be able to send out new notices for the new date, given also that it's so far off, and to go ahead and put in there that there would be a public hearing at the next meeting. And so if the commission wouldn't mind, go ahead and take that up.
The next meeting or the November 12th?
The November 12th meeting.
Yeah, at that meeting. Okay. Publication and the public hearing will be reopened.
Yeah, actually, we can go ahead and have a motion for the
So moved.
reopening. I apologize.
Can't say that?
No, to reopen the public hearing, I think you'd need to.
Commissioners, okay.
Yes.
Okay, the motion is to defer till November the 12th, which we've already taken care of that, but it's to reopen the public hearing. Is there a motion for that?
Second.
Motion second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Okay.
We will reopen the public hearing. Consent agenda.
First, as information for our audience, if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Planning Commission today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Planning Commission's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met, please be advised that you should contact independent legal counsel. As noticed to the public, the items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the commission requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda begin with item number 6. This can be found on page 5 of your agenda, the Harvest Hills Homes SP. This is a request to rezone from R6 to SPR zoning for property located at 20, 22, and 24 North Hill Street to permit up to 10 residential units. And staff's recommendation is to approve with conditions and disapprove without all conditions. Item number 7 on page 5 of your agenda is 2015 SP 079-001. It's 1820 12th Avenue South. This is a request to rezone from R8 to SPMU zoning to permit a mixed-use development with up to 6 residential units and 1,000 square feet of general office. Staff's recommendation is to approve with conditions and disapprove without all conditions. Item number 10 on page 6 of your agenda is the Cottages of Vista. This is a concept plan approval to create 47 lots for properties located at 515 and 520 Green Lane and Green Lane unnumbered. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. Item number 11, also on page 6 of your agenda, is 2015S-103-001. This is a re-subdivision of Kenmore Place. It's a request for final plat approval to create 4 lots on property located at 1229 McGavick Pike, and staff's recommendation is to approve with conditions. Item number 12, 2015 DTC 001001 on page 7 of your agenda is a request for modification of overall height for property located at 201, 209, and 217 First Avenue South and 206, 216, and 222 Second Avenue South to permit a 25-story mixed-use office building totaling 305 feet, where 15 stories is permitted by right and 30 stories is permitted bonus height maximum. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. Under other business, on page 7 of your agenda, we have item number 13, a new employee contract for Brandon Burnett. Item 14, to set the public hearing for November 12, 2015 for subdivision regulation amendments. Item 15, a resolution authorizing the expenditure of $50,000 from the FY 2016 Advanced Planning and Research Fund for an inclusionary housing feasibility and policy study between the Metropolitan Planning Commission and Economic and Planning Systems Incorporated. And number 19, to accept the director's report and approve administrative items.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Commissioners, items that is that it? Okay. Items been requested on consent is number items 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 19. Is there a motion to accept those on consent? Motion second to approve those on consent. All in
Chairman,
favor?
I have a question. I don't want to take it off consent, but just given the complication, what's the word? How complicated this area is right now, I just thought it would be helpful. My understanding on item number 10 is that it's a subdivision request. And so because we don't have our rural subdivision policy in place, it would go forward as it is, and that we could only, even if we deferred it, we could only defer it up to 60 days. So I just wanted to clarify that for the public's sake to understand that this is moving forward as a subdivision. I guess I should ask staff, why do we put it on consent? I suppose I'd let you explain it.
Sure. It's on the consent agenda right now because it meets the current subdivision regulations.
And that even if it were trying to defer to catch up with the rural, we don't have, it's not going to fit the
Operating under the
calendar.
rule that we've got today.
Is that correct?
I'm sorry.
We're operating, the approval is
Yes.
based on the rules that we've
Rules as
got
of
today,
today.
not what we
Okay.
may expect in the future.
Precisely. And we haven't had a request from the community to hear that item.
Okay, and well, I wanted to ask the question, but it also, the timing wouldn't affect it anyway.
That's
I just sort of wanted to get that out in the public. Thank
Right.
you.
I think to your point, Commissioner, and that is that we have to consider these. Once they're in front of the commission and on your agenda, you have 60 days to consider them, or they're deemed approved. And so those 60 days will have run before we're able to consider the new policy as well as the subregs.
Okay, again, the items on consent are items 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 19. We had a motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Any opposed? Those items have now been approved. So for the members of the audience, the items that will be on public hearing today that you'll be allowed to speak, item number 1, 3, 4, 5, and 9. All the other business has been taken care of.
Okay. Item number 1. This is a request to apply a detached accessory dwelling unit overlay. Staff recommendation is to approve. Just a bit of history. The Planning Commission recommended disapproval on June 25th to allow for additional time for discussions with neighbors. The council approved on second reading on July 7th, 2015, and referred back to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission deferred at the July 23rd meeting to allow for new notices and signs, for new notices to be mailed and signs to be posted. There has been no change to the request. The request is to apply a detached accessory dwelling unit overlay to approximately 129 acres within the Shelby Hills area. The property is currently zoned RS5. The policy for the area is T4 Urban Neighborhood Evolving, in part T4 Urban Neighborhood Maintenance and Conservation. In regards to the DIDU overlay, which would be established with BL 2015-1120, it is currently under consideration by Metro Council. This would allow for DIDUs as an accessory use in areas where the overlay is applied. Current standards do exist within the zoning ordinance in regards to detached accessory dwelling units. This application does not establish standards, it only applies the overlay to this area. The standards I have provided in regards to where a detached accessory dwelling unit would be allowed, it does require that it be either located within that it have the proper zoning or be in an overlay, that it be located within a historic overlay district, that it be located within a UDO with standards for DIDUs, that it have an improved alley abutting the rear or side lot line, or if in the case that it doesn't have an alley, that it exceeds 15,000 square feet in size. A lot also must meet the minimum standard of the zoning ordinance in regards to the base size. In this case, RS5, you would have to be a minimum of 5,000 square feet to be eligible. In regards to the standards, there are locational standards to where the building can be located. There are also standards for access. There are size standards and bulk and mass standards in regards to the relationship to the principal structure. There are design standards that say that it has to be a similar style to the principal structure. Additionally, in regards to ownership, there's no more than one DIDU allowed on a single lot in conjunction with the principal structure. It cannot be divided from the property ownership of the principal structure, and either the DIDU or the principal structure shall be owner occupied. And again, staff is recommending approval.
This item is open for public hearing. The applicant be allowed 10 minutes. Could keep 2 back for rebuttal if they would like. So,
Members of the Commission, my name is Peter Westerholm. I represent East Nashville's District 6, in which this overlay is proposed. We've been through this a couple times, and I appreciate the opportunity to come before you once again to go over everything. I hope that you've had the opportunity to review the materials that I sent over yesterday, going over some of the past of where we are, some of the challenges that the community faces, and how this tool was devised as something that would be an appropriate tool to utilize to really achieve a couple of key things. One is the retention of housing stock of a smaller size. With the smaller zoning, with the restricted zoning for density, the lot sizes have gone up significantly because of its location as an urban neighborhood. And we're seeing the replacement by housing that is much more expensive, much more massive. And so this came about as an opportunity to retain and maintain housing stock of that smaller size that will create an additional price point. Everything that we've looked at in other cities that have DIDUs, everything that we look at, including what Nashville Next promotes as responsible infill, responsible ways to put in density that does not tax the infrastructure of an existing neighborhood, we feel that this offers an opportunity to do just that. I've worked with Council Lady Allen on the broader bill, and we think that this is an opportunity to apply it in a meaningful way. I don't think that there's that much disagreement on the appropriateness of the policy. However, there were some concerns about where we are in the public process in the neighborhood. Now that this has been noticed an additional time, there have been additional meetings. There have been notices provided to over 400 households that were hand-delivered with the specific details that the planning staff reviewed, explaining what the DIDU bill does, what it doesn't do. I've continued to have conversations. I do understand that there are some folks here who have some questions and perhaps have some concerns that they feel outweigh the benefits that the DIDU overlay would bring to the neighborhood. I happen to disagree, and I do think that, as I try to point out, that any concern about about safety in the alley, any concern about short-term rentals, any concern about impact on the infrastructure. With so many examples in 4 adjacent neighborhoods where these are in place, I've not seen any of those adverse impacts outweigh the benefits that DADUs can bring. And so I think that these have been vetted, they have been proven, and I'm happy to make sure that we get it just right. I think that we are at a place where it's right. Unfortunately, we can't tailor it specifically. This is just a straight application of the design of the guidelines from the code, and I think it is the responsible way to move forward. One final point is that based on a meeting we had in the neighborhood regarding what other options might be available to the community, we looked at what would a specific plan do, what would rezoning to a straight R, what would doing nothing do, what would an urban design overlay achieve. And with each of those, as we try to look at what they offer, what they don't offer, I still remain convinced that this is the best opportunity to address the concerns that I hear throughout the community, including those who have some concerns. I think that this is the best option for the Shelby Hills neighborhood, and I'll be happy to respond afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak in support of this? Please come to the microphone, give us your name, be allowed 2 minutes.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Josh Randolph. I live at 1710 Eastside Avenue, right in the middle of the overlay, and I'm here to speak in support and approval of this project. Appreciate you giving us a second chance to go back and have some more meetings about this, and I wanted to thank Peter for all of his hard work. I've just noticed that he's been out and about walking the streets and on Facebook answering a lot of questions that I know people have had. My wife and I have lived at 1710 for about 3 years now as a rental unit, and we are about to move into a new house just about a street away, and the house that we're currently living in will be torn down and there'll be a new home built there. I love this neighborhood. I love the character of this neighborhood. I would hate to see this neighborhood go to an R zoning. I love that it is RS, and being so close to downtown, I understand that density is inevitable, a couple miles from downtown, so I think that this is a smart way to increase the density, allow for a different type of housing stock that is starting to go away because of all the new construction, but at the same time keep the character intact of what this neighborhood is single family homes along the street, and so I would ask for your support as well, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jessica Randolph. I'm married to that guy. I live at 1710 Eastside Avenue, and I also love this neighborhood, but I'm also a real estate agent, and I get a lot of calls of people that are moving here, musicians, artists, people that are transplanting to Nashville, and you all know that there are tons of those. And a lot of people want to be in East Nashville for its character and its liveliness, and I have struggled to find rentals that are affordable for that creative type. And so I think this DADU proposal would be a really great way for these people moving here to find a place to live that is affordable in a cute neighborhood, very close to downtown. They could ride their bike. So I'm really excited to be able to help people to find those places to live. And I'm also in support of keeping the character of the neighborhood. It is very unique, and this part of town, especially being so close to Shelby Park, I think having more people over there would only be a good thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Martino, and I live in the affected area affected by the DADU overlay proposed today. And I am excited to support this overlay. I am a resident of Shelby Hills and also a landlord who rents property to long-term tenants in Shelby Hills. I believe this overlay will provide more options for affordable long-term rentals in our area. For example, I may be interested in adding a long-term rental on my own residence, the property where I live, with a DADU to add to my rental portfolio if this passes. I know other neighbors who are also both residents and landlords in Shelby Hills who support the DADU for the same reason, to add to their ability to offer long-term rentals to Nashville residents. The small property rental company I've started with my partner is a long-term investment for our retirement, as well as a way for us to invest in our community. With options like a DADU on my own property, I can build my portfolio of rentals just a bit more, allows for a scaling of costs that can help me keep renting without raising rents too much across the board. As you know, Nashville needs more homes that are smaller and more affordable. We need to take advantage of all strategies to this end. DADUs are one of those smart strategies that has worked nicely in our surrounding East Nashville neighborhoods. Besides planning for more long-term rentals, I have also learned from neighbors a desire to use DADUs to keep growing or changing families in the neighborhood. DADUs are great for families with aging parents or other family members who are not able to live with total independence. There are a couple of families on my street alone that need a DADU to handle such a change in their family. I really want us to see these great families stay in the neighborhood. Again, I would ask for you to support the DADU overlay for Shelby Hills. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for reconsidering this one more time. My name is Sarah Martin McConnell, and I am also a resident in District 6. And actually, my mother moved to Nashville after Hurricane Katrina, and we moved to East Nashville in order to accommodate her. Not in a DADU, because we didn't find a house with a mother-in-law suite that was workable. But my husband and I have talked about maybe a garage apartment. When I moved to Nashville, I moved into a wonderful neighborhood in just this kind of a place. As a single person coming to the city, it was a great neighborhood. I could walk places, and I just think it's a good thing, and I believe that our neighborhood is generally in favor of it. The only other thing I would add is the great thing is these structures would be mandated to look like the existing houses. So they would be in character with the houses that are already there. And I think that's a really good thing, rather than even, a string of apartments. I think it's a great option for infill, and I highly suggest that you vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ryan Nichols of 501 Village Court, which is kind of in the middle of the swath that would not have access to having the DADUs there. It is in the middle of Shelby Hills, however, so my neighbors will be building them. I'll be living all around them. Very much in support of anything conceptually that increases density close to the urban core. I've lived in a lot of different cities around the world. Nashville is booming. We're within a mile and a half of downtown. I just think that this is what comes with the territory of living in that area. If you want to live in a big suburban lot with grassy lawns, and you don't need to, you have to be moving further out. And I would love to see whatever we could do to restrict that size of primary structures and DADUs as well. I mean, I'm very much a believer in small, well-designed spaces. That's what I do. I build things. So as it currently stands, I don't have any concerns with the short-term rental issue. I think it's great that some people are going to be able to do that, and that we're going to restrict the overall number of short-term rental units. So anyway, in favor.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ron Taylor, and I'm located at 1904 Long Avenue, which is in the proposed overlay area. The main reason why I wanted to come in favor of this DADU overlay approval is for many of the same reasons that my constituents have stated previously. But for some other remaining reasons is, as my family grows, we want to have the capability to allow access for our kids to have other places to stay in the home or outside of the home in our property. We were lucky enough and fortunate enough to buy an older Victorian home when we were able to move into the neighborhood, but in that home it's not capable of actually adding on to or doing anything of growth. So for us to remain in the neighborhood and keep a consistent look in the neighborhood, we would have to have the DADU pass, which is our number one goal. I do feel it is a sustainable way for us to grow and face the growth challenges that we have, not only in our neighborhood, but in Nashville as a core. I've lived in cities like New York City and Long Island, and I was pushed out of those neighborhoods because I could not afford the rent in those neighborhoods at the time. I feel like we're facing challenges with our growth that will allow the artistic community to come back into our neighborhood and preserve it as to what it used to be, and in essence going to other neighborhoods within the city that are less of what we would want them to come over to our side of the river. I also feel like this is going to be a good way for us to maintain and regulate any short-term rentals or growth opportunities in that regard. And as far as some neighbors I have seen where they have unrestricted use of their garages, and that's not able to be regulated. So I feel like this is a good way for us to regulate it. And I just appreciate you taking the time to listen to me, and I hope that you approve this overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Wendy Harlan. I live at 1911 East Side Avenue. I'm here to support this bill for pretty much all the same reasons that my neighbors have already stated. My husband and I have lived there for 13 years. We are now priced out of our neighborhood if we want to move into another house, but our family has grown. We love our neighborhood. We love our neighbors. We want to stay where we are, and this would allow us to do that. It would allow us to, we both work from home, I homeschool, and it would give us the extra space now to use that detached dwelling that we already have, but as a living space, and eventually use it as a long-term rental for income when we don't need the additional space when our boys have grown and left the house. So thank you very much for considering this. And
thank you.
My name is Matt Flinner. I also live at 1911 East Side Avenue, and I thank you for considering this bill. I come in support of it as well. I am a musician. I have a lot of musician friends in the neighborhood, and I feel that back before it became an expensive neighborhood, the artists and musicians were a big part of what made it an attractive, let's call it a hip place to live. And what brought some businesses in, what brought some coffee shops in, what brought some other restaurants in was the character of the neighborhood. And as we see rents go up, as we see housing prices go up, we see a lot of my friends moving out because they can't afford the rent anymore. So I see this as an opportunity to, as many of the other supporters have said, bring some of that character back in, or keep the character of the neighborhood preserved, which we live in Music City, yet we're pricing a lot of the musicians out of their own neighborhoods. And I see this as an opportunity to help prevent that from happening in our neighborhood. So I thank you very much for considering it.
Thank you.
My name is Kristen Page. I'm a property owner on South 18th, and I would just like to agree with all of these people. I've been in Nashville now for 8 years. I moved to East Nashville specifically after growing up in a kind of very large, rich suburban area that was very kind of continuous, all one kind of person, all one kind of income level, all one kind of housing. And the whole reason we were attracted to East Nashville in the first place, like many that sowed the seeds that made the neighborhood great and made it what it is today, was the diversity of age groups, of economic privilege, of income level, of interest. And it's the very thing that, in being here 8 years and owning several different properties, I've seen change. And in particular, in the Shelby Hills area, I think we all know there are a lot of people eyeing that area for being so close to downtown, so close to the park. It has a lot of advantages to it for homeowners, but also for developers. I've been told point blank by a couple people with an agenda in the neighborhood that they have every intention of turning the neighborhood into something like Belmead, turning it into a place of $700,000 houses exclusively, and that is their agenda. I think that while I would enjoy all kinds of people moving to the neighborhood, I think all of us homeowners that have been there for a while, we have to be able to balance that out. We have to take some action to ensure that there is diverse options for housing, and I think this DADU overlay is a great option. In particular, not just the reasons that people have mentioned as far as elderly parents, kids growing up, different options of families expanding, but as far as the concern about short-term rentals, I agree that it's actually a healthy way to regulate short-term rentals. I have a lot of experience with doing short-term rentals, including in smaller buildings, like attached units that were kind of grandfathered into the area, and I can I can totally confirm that as far as the concerns about safety and the kind of people brought in, I kicked out. Airbnb is such a tight regulated place that there really is very little safety concern. It also, the kind of noise levels you're not going to get with such small accessory dwelling units. The concern is definitely the bigger places. So I think that it's definitely a good option, and I would be in support of it.
My name is Luke Gustafson. I live at 1003 West Greenwood Avenue. I don't actually live in the neighborhood that's affected, but you guys passed on consent overlay that affects my property earlier this year. And I'm here in support. Everyone's pretty much said what I was going to say, but I did want to just encourage you that, we've heard a lot about affordable rental units. Rent continues to go up in the neighborhood, and the reason is because there's a large demand for rental units close to downtown, and there's not much supply. So this is an opportunity for homeowners to get into, to help meet that supply in the neighborhood by providing long-term rentals, hopefully helping to stem the increasing cost of rent. I also wanted to just mention one thing I heard the opponents talk about in the past is the short-term rentals like Airbnb. I think that we had a bill that passed in February, BL 2014-951, that addressed short-term rentals in Nashville. I think that that addresses a lot of the concerns that have been raised already. So I'm here to thank you for your support.
Thank you.
I'm Zev Goring. I live at 1621 Electric Avenue. I've been there about 11 years. And I have 6 or 7 rental properties. 4 of them are in this area. And I work pretty hard to maintain affordable properties for my tenants. And in lieu of that, none of them have left. I've had tenants for 7-8 years now, just because I like to keep the rents low, and that's something that gets harder and harder to do. I think this really is more of an issue of, as the city grows overall, where do we see people moving to? And, a healthy city has a dense urban core, and this is a no-brainer. How do we maintain a healthy city is by keeping a dense urban core and having a livable, walkable, dense urban core. And this neighborhood has no problem supporting it. It abuts Shelby Park. I mean, it's I think one of the largest parks in the city, in Davidson County. So, having more housing in this area is a fantastic way to be able to offer more options for people, whether they're starting out in life and renting, or whether they're ending towards their life and needing a smaller place to live. So I hope that you consider passing this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Christina Teeple, and I own the house on 1704 East Side. And I'm a landlord, and I rent it out. It's a 540 square foot unit, and since it's so small, I'm able to rent it out month to month, which is a huge shortage right now because people are tearing down the houses and building. So there's a shortage of rentals, especially when people need to move into the area while they're building. So I'm in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in support? Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Please come to the microphone like the other people did and line up, please.
Hi, I'm Bob Hopkins. I live at 1300 Shelby Avenue. I had a lot to say that I'm not going to say because I think we got some good news here. This group and this group aren't far apart. Peter's known it for a while. Our biggest concern is short-term rental. They're misinformed that the law that the gentleman referenced does not apply to these DADUs. Peter knows that. There's over 400 short-term rentals in 37206 right now. He has not done any research to see how it affects other neighborhoods. All we want to change on this is it has to be a long-term rental, at least a month. You do this week-to-week stuff, we're going to be filled with Airbnb. This is verifiable. Just get on their site and search. Search from your right now. He's misinformed and he's not telling the truth. These groups, you make that change, you unite a neighborhood. That's all we've been asking for this entire time. Peter said there were meetings since the last Planning Commission. There were not. There was one. There was one meeting attended by 15 people. There were 1,000 people affected by this overlay. There was a vote at that meeting. 60% were against it. There was a petition passed in support of the overlay. 95% of the community was against it. 95%. They could get less than 50 signatures of 700 homes in its current form. Put a limit on short-term rental, and you could unite this neighborhood. It's a big reason Peter lost his seat. And I really think you should give us time to work with our new councilman and change this so it will unite the neighborhood. Thank you.
Hello again, council member or planning commission members. The first time this bill was brought before you, you disapproved it because you felt that there was not appropriate education and notification and outreach with the neighborhood. I want to confirm that nothing has changed since that meeting. We had one meeting. It lasted less than an hour. We were kicked out of the Eastside Community Center because it was literally the last hour before our last meeting in front of you where it was deferred again. So nothing's changed since you disapproved this the first time it was put in front of you. And at that meeting, as Bob said, there was a majority against this. And it's uncomfortable to say this since Peter's standing right there, and I think he's a decent guy. I think we all genuinely like him as a person, but I suspect that his lack of communication with District 6 and his practice of implementing these types of legislative measures for our neighborhood without any community input probably had a lot to do and cost him his seat on the council in resounding fashion. So I like Peter, and as Bob said, I think we could unite this neighborhood. It's uncomfortable to be up here and speak against neighbors. Like, I'm sure you're used to it, but I'm not. With the changes, we're all for this detached dwelling, but our biggest fear are those Airbnbs and short-term rentals, transient people, not knowing, we spoke at the debate, and I'm running out of time, but the importance of knowing your neighbors. I won't know who's coming and going from a building if it's a short-term rental. So please disapprove this. Thank you.
Yes, the other members to speak to keep the issue and keep the personality down.
Thank you for having me here today. My name is Matt Schutz, and I live at 605 South 10th Street. My community of Shelby Hills is one of small-scale structurally viable homes, many 20 feet or shorter. And as the city grows and urbanizes, it makes logical sense to allow for multiple living units on properties proximate to existing urban nodes. However, I'm concerned that in today's real estate climate, the proposal before you could unintentionally threaten existing relatively affordable housing infrastructure. Scorched earth demolition and reconstruction is concerning for a few reasons. First, it reduces the ability of the urban workforce to afford housing proximate to their place of employment. It generally contributes to urban deforestation. It increases waste and wastes energy in the form of embodied energy of discarded houses, contributing to our generation's greatest challenge, energy conservation and climate change. I feel that the overlay in its current form could encourage more demolition. Instead of choosing to save existing structures and build a detached dwelling unit, I feel as though developers may be more apt to raise existing homes in order to squeeze every possible ounce of equity out of a property. Let's not forget that where detached dwelling units have been previously permitted in historic districts, there also has been demolition restrictions. And the beauty of a zoning overlay is that the guidelines for that overlay can be tailored to the specific neighborhood. However, the overlay before you does not have demolition restrictions, and it is not tailored to our specific neighborhood. The following could be the primary point on which I ultimately disagree with my councilperson. I'm uncertain that the DADU overlay in its current form promotes the type of density and affordability that healthy and diverse neighborhoods exhibit. I think that healthy democratic density is represented by an increase in property owners per unit of land area and a more efficient use of infrastructure and energy. Thank you for your time today. Pete is my neighbor and friend, and density is an accepted attribute of healthy cities. The tough question in today's atmosphere is how do we best grow without encouraging wealth inequality and environmental instability? I'm asking for you to please consider these aforementioned concerns and, if necessary, defer this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Margot Chambers, and I'm at 3803 Princeton Avenue. And I'm asking you to vote no on this item because the proposal before you depends on legislation that does not yet exist, and that's the Detached Dwelling Unit Overlay Bill, BL 2015-1120. The Commission should not consider any DADU overlay district until there's an approved, well-vetted, well-understood legislation in place. And if you approve this proposal tonight, due to the fast-track legislation, you can approve this DADU on Tuesday night. The DADU overlay legislation 1120 is currently under the amendment phase. Commissioner Allen, who is a co-sponsor of 1120, has told constituents of amendments not listed in the staff reports in front of you. If you approve this tonight, you're again approving something that's also in conflict with 1120. At the last community meeting for 1120, which was August 4th, there were no constituents in favor of that legislation. There are rumors that 1120 will be withdrawn by Commissioner Allen. And this proposal should also be disapproved because the public has been shut out of this process. It rezones 129 acres affecting 700 homes and doubles the density and by doubling the dwelling units allowed. Councilman Westerholm told the council on July 7th that he had 47 likes on a Facebook page, and that's what constituted getting 700 homes impacted. There's no infrastructure studies that have been done. We don't know the demand on the water, the sewer, the trash, the school enrollment, or the impact to the roads. And that's because you got the enabling legislation for 1120 on consent. Please do not consider this amendment. Thank you.
Dear Planning Commission, my name is Jason Garrett, and I live at 1508 Sevier Court. I would ask that we slow down the implementation of our DADU overlay with an indefinite deferral or disapproval. I hope you had a chance to read through the dozen or more emails that I know that many that weren't able to attend here today had sent. Many of the faces that I've seen just previously are people that I've never seen at the single community meeting that we had regarding this. So it's interesting and also well respected to hear their points on this. I think we all want to work as a community toward this, but when we don't have an opportunity to do that or we're not transparently identified for the overlay process, that's very hard. Over the past months, many points have been identified and brought before the Planning Commission, Council, and sponsors that show weaknesses that could be addressed with better tailoring of the DADU specifications and guidelines. It's not clear that one DADU bill may fit all, that we can have the same DADU, this 1120 bill that's applied to all of the areas around the city. Our proximity to downtown and inherent land value are subject to abuse. We've been rapid and forthright providing amendments, but we've been told that that's not somewhat possible. Our process has been rushed. We've taken scarcely any time to discuss this overlay in our own neighborhood. The template legislation continues to be amended. How can we adopt something that's not even finalized? It's left the sentiment that everyone in our neighborhood may not feel that we're equals, that a group of a chosen few can make decisions of what's best and decide what's going to happen to our neighborhoods. Some are privy to information or legislation early. Many are mincing words, dates, petitions, or policy buzzwords to garner support, avoiding discussion with what fear? The fear of people being properly informed and aware. Please encourage our lesson here to others, and we'll come back with a majority constituency when it identifies a need, discusses it, and works together as intended in the overlay process. I hope that day will be someday in the future, but it's not today. It wasn't 3 weeks ago, and it wasn't 3 months ago. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Warren Pash. I live in this neighborhood as well. I've been here in my house for close to 13 years. And as it stands, there's people who are renting out a house directly across the street from me to several renters. So what I experience at this point in my life is I never know if I can get a parking spot in front of my own home, and I never know any night of the week when I'll be able to get to sleep because of people coming and going all the time. So I'm trying to understand how this is going to make what exists now better. So my concern is that people haven't discussed things like enforcement and behavioral issues and questions, because none of this is going to work if people don't know how to treat one another. Thank you.
My name is Bobby Sears. I live at 1627 Electric Avenue. And my problem with this dadu is the closeness to the alley. They send 5 to 10 feet, which means they're going to be in the alley. And unfortunately, there's people in Shelby Hills that don't know that you can't put liquid in your trash. And these sanitation trucks are not designed to carry liquid. Therefore, they just throw it up and down the alley. I've had them come out 5 times with brushes, disinfect. They even brought a pressure washer one time and clean the alley behind my house. And not only does it stink so bad I can't sit on my porch, it's a health hazard. And the short-term rental means you're going to get mostly out-of-town people. And I've lived here all my life, and I don't want them leaving here thinking that Nashville stinks. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's my husband. I'm Susan Sears. I live at 1627 Electric Avenue. I'm a generational native East Nashvilleian. I feel like I can speak for the natives in my area that have called me, that have known my family for many, many years, that are really concerned about this. You know, we've seen a lot of destruction in our neighborhood, a lot, over the past 2.5 years. We've got 86 families right now that are displaced and are homeless because of the redevelopment of Shelby Hills. I'm against this dadu for several reasons. I did get to speak with Peter for a long time after the council the other night, and he did answer some of my questions. However, I still stand in opposition for several reasons. The dadus that I know of during CMA week of this year were rented out for extraordinary amount of money per day and caused a lot of disruption in the neighborhoods that they're in my area, and the area that covers District 6. I'm running out of time. I think the bottom line is it's going to, we can do this more responsibly. We don't have the input. We've not had the meetings. Our voices have not come together. We have a little small group of the neighborhood association that has interest, that their interest is in development and money, making money off of their backyards. I think it's just going to be like motels in our backyard. And how are we going to know who are in those dadus? We need to know who we're living with. And we need to know our safety. We already have enough problems as it is.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Lisa Bastarash. I live on 1626 Shelby Ave. I'm speaking in opposition to this overlay because of lack of community involvement. The channels that were used to inform the community were primarily ones that are electronic and used by young people. Facebook, which even I'm not on, I'm too old, I guess, and Google Listserv. These channels of communication do not reach a large number of the households in the overlay area. And I'm concerned that a lot of people still don't even know what a dadu is or haven't even heard of this overlay at all. And they won't know about it until their neighbor's putting one up, and then they won't even really know what's going on. I just think it's very disenfranchising of the people in the neighborhood. I don't think that people are necessarily opposed to this. I just think that a lot of people want a community discussion. We want a little bit more time. And so I ask you to give us that time and give us that opportunity to have that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Craig Pruitt. I am third generation at 509 South 13th Street. My friends and neighbors pretty well covered the issues on this, and I just wanted to come up and thank you for your time in this matter. And I disapprove of this overlay as it's written. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi there, my name is Ed Wilmore. I live in Shelby Hills. You've read my emails. You've actually seen my face before. But now I'm here again. Thanks for putting this first on the agenda. It was awesome. The 4.5 hours wait, the last time and the time before, was torturous, even to just fast forward on YouTube. So basically, I hope you've read all those emails, for and against. And I'm here in support of actual democracy and spreading information and actual public discussion. We're talking about rezoning the vast majority. We're talking about rezoning 720 houses. And the vast majority of these property owners have had absolutely no input or vote on this. They've not had a chance to publicly discuss or vet the bill, and they did not request it, and it has, and actually have not agreed to it. I know our councilman has had opportunities to do outreach. The Shelby Hill Neighborhood Association, all 12 of us that show up, who I don't think should run our neighborhood, but we should be a conduit of information. We did a repetitioning of the neighborhood to just get more people to come to the meetings. And at that time, Peter Westerholm was there, and it had passed first reading, and yet he didn't piggyback on that to actually try to get a community meeting and an actual discussion. The one that happened at East Park was a joke and a fake meeting. 2 weeks after he promised, and only 12 hours before your last planning commission meeting. This has just been a farce of process. What should happen, and maybe in a year what will happen, is a whole bunch of people from Shelby Hills will come here and they'll say, we've had some public discussion of this. We like what came out, which is currently not passed on 1120. We like what came out of that. We want that for our neighborhood. Here's a list of the property owners that have agreed, and we have like 70% of the people in the neighborhood know about this, and heck, even 40% of the people agree to it. I'd say yeah, but that's not what's happened here. It's just being foisted upon people. Thank you very much.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, the applicant will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal.
I have no idea.
Thank you, members of the commission. I just want to reiterate my support for the Dadu overlay and address some of the things that were brought up. This has undergone the same amount of community input that we try to see for most any sort of zone change. It was discussed at a neighborhood meeting. It was discussed at a separate meeting following the last planning and council meeting. It was at short notice than we would have liked, perhaps so. It did take us some time. We did recruit we recruited someone that was an expert on affordable housing to come talk to that and be present there. We were trying to make sure we had a date that would fit for everyone, and if we had a perfect world where we could schedule meetings where everyone could attend, I'd be the first to say yes, let's do that. But we did have a meeting to address another point about notice. We communicate like many other neighborhoods. Communication is at neighborhood meetings, it is on listservs, it is on Facebook groups, and we try to make sure there are other ways to get the word out. That is why I made sure there were 400 letters hand-delivered to properties in Shelby Hills in the affected area. Those contained a list of exactly all the provisions that was included by staff. What is a DADU? What would this mean? What does this not mean? And that was handed out, hand-delivered on over 400 houses in an attempt to address those folks that might not have means to communicate electronically. I did receive some phone calls from that effort, and of those I spoke with, their concerns were addressed, and they felt that they were comfortable with this. I do think that where we are with the end of term, it was a bit more rushed than it might have otherwise been, but that's the timing. I think that where we are and looking at the challenges of the community, the interest that's been there for quite some time, early on, even before I was elected to the council, there's been interest in DADUs in Shelby Hills. People had said, why can't we have one? And the answer was because the area was downzoned back in the 90s. I think that the time is right. I think that we are in a place where it makes sense to do so. The need is there. The ability for DADUs to address an appropriate need that's in high demand, looking at the demographics, looking at the challenges we face, I do think this is appropriate. I am, as was also mentioned, Council Lady Allen and I have been made aware of some proposed changes to the bill prior to third reading for the DADUs. One of those would be a requirement for, I believe it's 30 contiguous properties, so that it's not just a single area, but something that is more broadly applicable. There's also interest, I think, in, that's the one that I know has been presented and I think will be acted on. What's before you now would certainly meet that criteria, and I do think this process has been discussed for the same duration that other overlays have been discussed for, and I'd be happy to answer any questions and would be, again, ask you to support this legislation. I think that it's the right thing for the community and looks out for the long-term and short-term and medium-term for providing a high quality of life for this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Declare the public hearing closed. Councilman Hunt.
No comments at this time.
Lillian?
I have two, broader comments, and I would like staff to kind of speak to those. One, obviously being there was a lot of talk about notice, community input, and both times we've heard this, the commission has discussed it. So, and I would be appreciative if you could just talk about the notice requirements just from staff's or planning perspective. And then the second comment, which we can talk to after we talk about notice, is the ability to have some type of nearly tailored overlay. So, but can you please speak to notice first?
Sure. Notices are mailed to the properties within the area and and then in the surrounding area within 600 feet of this property. They are mailed. The planning department actually prepared and mailed those notices. In addition to that, signs are also posted in various places throughout the neighborhood.
What's the timing of that, of the mailing of the sign?
They are, I'm sorry, let me.
Approximately 2 weeks before the Planning Commission meeting and 21 days before the council meeting. So these notices went out, joint notices for the Planning Commission and council public hearing the first time, and then after the commission heard it the last time, another set of signs and notices went out.
Okay. So that, I guess that addresses my first point, because there was a lot of talk about people not having the opportunity or not being noticed. I just wanted to make a point that planning, makes an effort actually to get notice out too. And so the second question, there's a lot of conversation among the neighbors that the two sides really aren't that far apart, and the short-term rentals problem is what's really causing, I guess, all the disagreement about what should be approved. And so can we talk about, I know obviously council is very much involved in this, but the ability to have like a nearly tailored DADU overlay?
Well, I'll tell you that I spoke to the council lady just a moment ago about the very issue that's being raised. And the question is, do properties that have DADUs where short-term rental is being used on the property, does that count against the total number of short-term rentals that are allowed in an area? The legislation requires that there only be so many in a district. And right now, it appears that the legislation does not count that against the number of short-term rentals that can be permitted in an area. If it's owner-occupied, which a DADU would be required, then it wouldn't count against it. Now, that's not to say the codes isn't tracking it right now, because my understanding from speaking to Carrie Logan a moment ago is that they are tracking it, but ultimately the legislation wouldn't use those DADUs that are being used for short-term rental to count against the total number of short-term rentals in a district. And the council lady may want to speak to this more herself, but I know that that is something that's being considered to be added to the DADU legislation.
I think both sides had really good arguments. I think DADUs in theory are very smart for all the reasons that the supporters articulated, but I mean, in the vicinity of Shelby Hills, obviously the location close to downtown, I mean, the short-term rentals problem is going to be a really big problem. And so, I mean, I would not want to vote in favor of something that would be so detrimental to a lot of the neighborhood. And I mean, obviously, there seems to be a huge disagreement among the neighborhood about what's proper. I mean, I'd be in favor of DADUs, but in a way that it addressed the neighbors' concerns.
Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank the neighbors, and I know this is, I guess, the third time you've been back. At least we did move it up to the first spot. You know, I think both parties have really, really good arguments as well. You know, sitting here listening, the one thing I had a question about was that there would be more demolition potentially. And so I had a question about if that is true from maybe the staff, and or if it's probably neutral, or if the historical overlay could potentially have an impact. I thought that was an interesting argument, and I've never really thought about these potential DADUs creating more potential to destroy your house. I thought that the real intention was to, you know, have a person stay there and be able to afford the house as property values go up, property taxes, et cetera, and be able to pay their mortgage and that sort of thing. So I just thought it was interesting.
Yes, I think there would certainly be situations, both types of situations, where there is demolition and a detached accessory dwelling you build at the same time, or where a current homeowner adds one to their existing property. I do understand that there's an amendment proposed that would limit the demolition, tie it to a certain time frame within the building, compared to the building permit for the DADU. So if you had a permit for a DADU, then you couldn't get a building permit for demolition for, I believe it was 3 years, and then vice versa. If you demolished, you couldn't build a DADU for another year.
A council amendment, right?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Well, I thought that was interesting, so thank you for addressing that. You know, I want to hear from all the other commission members. I think that there's been a lot of public discussion about this. There's been a lot of discussion on the commission. There's been a lot of discussion at the council level. I respect both parties, and I would like to hear from the other commissioners before I make a decision.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Director, so if we pass this zone change request, then the legalities of governing the short-term rentals goes back to the council bill from Council Lady Allen? Is that how that works?
Yes.
For this particular area?
Yes, the elements of DADUs about where they're permitted, where they're not permitted, what they have to look like, their relationship to the primary structure, all of that's in the DADU bill where the original zoning tool was created. And so this is simply applying that tool over this area.
So in that particular bill, short-term rentals are allowed for 1 week at a time?
There's a separate piece of legislation that passed this council term addressing short-term rentals. So in areas where you can currently do DADUs, the DADU short-term rental is addressed under the short-term rental legislation. This legislation would apply the DADU overlay and the creation of the DADU overlay and the application both for this zone change and a zone change in District 5 are on third reading for next week at council.
So long answer is that short-term rentals would be allowed in this particular area.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm troubled by that. I don't think that's the intent of the families who want to add dadoos to have in-laws live there or expand family homes. I don't think the intention should be for short-term rentals, personally.
Yeah, I echo the comments by my colleagues here. I am troubled by the fact that if we allow short-term rentals, the impact that it will have on the neighbors, the potential negative impacts, might I add. The other issue, and I think Greg brought this up, are the demolition restrictions, or someone mentioned that earlier, and I'm still not clear on the demolition restrictions. If we pass this as it is today, is there any ordinance in place now to address that, or is that what's forthcoming?
Yes, that is on the bill to create the detached accessory dwelling unit overlay. There's an amendment proposed by the Councilmember Holloman to compare the date of the demolition of a home to the date of a permit issued for a dadu, and that there has to be a certain amount of time between those two permits, the demo permit and the dadu permit, so that you can't purchase a property and then develop it immediately with a brand new single-family home and a brand new detached accessory dwelling unit.
That helps out. Thank you.
Andre?
Could I ask Councilwoman Allen to address anything we're missing at this point on what is proposed? I just want to, is that all right? Can you, we've heard what staff has said, so if there's something else maybe that we're not hearing, we would appreciate your letting us know.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. I'll address several things here. You're correct, Secretary Sloan, that the short-term rental currently does not include the detached accessory dwelling units in the non-owner occupied, which are subject to a 3% limit. I am absolutely willing to go back and have that conversation. Originally, when I left that out, it was because the assumption was that where they existed, the owner would be on site, and therefore they would make sure that their tenants were behaving. But if people feel like this is an opportunity for yet more investment property, that's not my intent. So I'm happy to go back and have that conversation as soon as the new council term opens. And then secondly, then just to echo what Ms. Logan said, that there is a proposed amendment that would deal with, again, because of that very concern that would create an incentive to tear things down, because again, that was not the incentive, so that would require a lag time of 3 years. Other questions? Thank you.
And Councilman Westerholm, do you have any further thing to add to that part of the legislation that you've been involved in for what's coming next?
I would just add to that I think that as we've tried to identify the proposed amendments, identify the strengths and weaknesses of those, based on what I've heard so far about the main two, I think Council Lady Allen, I don't want to speak for her, but I think she's fairly comfortable with those. I felt fairly comfortable with those as well. Based on what I've heard from other council members, I feel like there's a good chance that those could be included in the final legislation. And I would just add that the concern about the short-term rentals is something that we've heard about before, and we've been trying to look at. As it's been enacted in other communities, there are a number of other neighborhoods that contain dadus that are eligible for short-term rental usage, and trying to figure out, are those working well? And I think that we've seen, from what I've seen, overall it's been working fairly well. There hasn't been any negative impacts that I've been aware of that have risen to a level that we'll have to take action, other than trying to figure out, do we need to tailor it more specifically?
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Jeff told me about a trip that he took recently into Africa, and it made me remember something I saw a long time ago and learned that lots of people often in communities make decisions by consensus. And I think we typically are majorities and counts in what we do up here, and normally what we're talking about is planning. But in this case, for some reason, I keep coming back to this neighborhood is pretty close on a lot of its thoughts, and if it could get to consensus, I think we might feel that it's actually it could be working in our regular democratic process. If the data have been out there and they're being tested sort of for their efficacies for all these big goals that we at planning want, and that there's some glitches and it's being worked on, then I feel like we could give it time to let that settle and then let this neighborhood reach a consensus. And normally we're saying we're planning and it's not about the politics of it, but I think in this, this is a planning tool that we're managing and learning about and fixing. And so I think we might be able to give it, sounds like not much more time, that it might all kind of come together. So I guess my feeling is I don't feel the rush. If we could, I don't know what our time limits are, but if we could give them a little more time, I might feel more comfortable. Is there more time to give them?
Let me add to that real quickly. It seems to me that one of the policies or one of the goals of the Planning Commission was to promote infill development to help us accommodate the density that's coming to the city. Daddies can serve that, and yet if they are built to accommodate short-term rentals for things like Airbnb, et cetera, that's not the intent of infill and increased density. That's taking things away from the hotels that are being built, et cetera. So I think, I agree with you. I think we're really, really close. And it seems to me that some type of short-term deferral would make sense in this case to get the two sides to coincide. Can we do that? You may say no.
Well, it's not that we're at the end of the legislative session. So either the council needs to take this up, or it's the same as it has the same effect as a withdrawal, or it depends on how it actually depends on how the council decides to take it forward after this. Not giving a recommendation now would be the same as an approval, and that's how it would be treated at the council going forward at their next meeting. So, you need to either vote it up or vote it down. A deferral would be just like voting it up, quite frankly.
Is there a way to say that we wanted to, if we were going to pass it forward with approval, to somehow make it contingent on the council bill that's at hand, or I guess not?
This is not an SP, where we can get in and and you're not the first person to ask that during this meeting, quite frankly. But we don't have the opportunity. The question before the commission here is it appropriate to apply this zoning tool to these lots?
I guess my thought is, I think our tendency is to think that it is an appropriate tool for these lots, and it is an area that we want it. And so if we were to feel comfortable with that planning decision, then we are saying, I think, that we'd be trusting the community decision to get it tweaked so that the rules are something everybody can live with once it gets amended. Is that how anybody would feel comfortable? I don't know. Commissioners?
No, I'll be honest, I would not feel comfortable with it because I am still concerned about the short-term rentals. And I cannot vote for this knowing that the short-term rental issue is still hanging out there. And of course, speaking for me, but I feel strongly about that because, we have to look at how our decisions, in my opinion, affect those who are there. And I think this is an awesome tool. I think what they're proposing is great, but we're missing that one element, and that's a deal breaker for me.
Further comments? Is there a motion?
Well, I guess I just wanted to hear some of the other thoughts of how you all feel about the daddies that exist. I mean, is that sort of...
Wait, state that again, Andre.
I guess I want to understand the commissioner's feelings about, like what he just suggested, is that that's the breaking point of the DADU at this point, and if we voted against it, it would then be able to come back again at another day as a new bill? Is that what we're thinking?
We either vote it down, they can bring it back to the next council, but I'd asked for other comments, and I didn't see any, so I asked for a motion.
Okay.
Well, just to speak on Commissioner McGuire's, I mean, I do think that dadoos in theory are good. I think for all the reasons that the supporters spoke about, I think they make a lot of sense, and they probably will make a lot of sense in this neighborhood. But for the reasons that Commissioner Dalton said, I would not be comfortable voting for it right now because there are still some unresolved items.
Okay. Andre?
Thank you.
Other comments? But give me a motion.
I recommend disapproval of staff's recommendation.
Second. Got a motion second to disapprove with staff recommendations. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So, ready for item number 3, I believe.
Good evening, Commissioners. Brett Thomas for Metro Planning. Item 3 is the Villas of the Meadows of 7 Points. The applicant is requesting to rezone from RS-15 to specific plan in order to permit up to 86 residential units on 45 lots. The property is located near Stewart's Ferry Pike and Earhart Road. The staff recommendation is to approve with conditions and disapprove without all conditions. The existing zoning is RS-15 and is intended for single-family dwellings. The policy is T3 suburban neighborhood evolving with a small area of conservation along the east property line. The plan proposes 45 lots with 86 residential units. As indicated in green, approximately 40% of the site is proposed as open space. As marked in red, the applicant proposes 4 single-family lots along Smotherman Lane on the western boundary. The other 41 lots are proposed as 2-family lots. 2-family lots take access from the existing Meadows of 7 Points subdivision to the north. Future connections are proposed to the east and south. In addition, a right-of-way reservation is proposed to the small property west of the project. However, it does not connect to Smotherman Lane. The lack of a direct connection to Smotherman Lane creates an issue as the burden of constructing the entire access is placed on the small property to the west. A direct connection to Smotherman Lane from the northeast corner of the site would also accommodate the Hesse Road extension identified in the major and collector street plan. The Hesse Road extension is an important east-west connector from Earhart Road to New Hope Road through largely undeveloped land. This slide depicts examples of 2-family residences. In addition to including architectural standards, staff has recommended garages be side or rear loaded, consistent with these images. Along with the standard conditions, staff is recommending the following conditions. Limit the maximum number of residences to 60 units. This would allow 15 2-family lots, which is 33% of the proposed lots. 33% of the lots. Staff recommends the 2-family lots be dispersed throughout the site to corner and larger lots. As mentioned previously, staff also recommends side or rear load garages, a direct connection from 7 Point Circle to Smotherman Lane, and additional design standards. Staff recommends approval with conditions and disapproval without all conditions.
Thank you. The item's open for public hearing. The applicant will be allowed 10 minutes and hold 2 back for rebuttal. Chairman McLean, members of the commission, my name is Tom White. I represent the applicant in this matter. I'd like to request 2 minutes for rebuttal. We're basically here seeking the support of the commission for this matter, but there's 2 of the conditions that we're asking to be eliminated. So I'll end up calling our request to be the applicant's request so it can be identified if we can gain support for it. Basically, the property is currently zoned RS-15. That allows 92 units, period. Our request is for 86 lots. We've decreased the number of potential lots of the development. There have been several neighborhood meetings. I want to thank Councilman Glover, who spoke here earlier, for taking a great deal of phone calls. There's been 2 neighborhood meetings, one of which he chaired. There's been at least one other that he did not attend. I think we can represent that we have significant neighborhood support for this. And you heard the councilman speaking initially that he was supportive. With respect to the two conditions, I want to address those very quickly. The staff suggested there be a connection to Smotherman Lane. That is an expense of approximately $700,000, and Smotherman Lane, by all the standards, is not up to public or private standards. So it's basically a $700,000 significant cost to the developer builder in this case, and it would connect basically to a road that's not up to public standards. So I don't think you're going to hear a lot of support from people in the neighborhood that want that done, and we would urge that that condition not be allowed. The second one is that the staff has suggested that the number of two-family lots be limited to 15. Our request is turned in, as referenced by the staff, is for 41 two-family lots with 4 single-family lots, which you saw up there in the screen. I want the commission to fully look at the pictures for the quality of units that we're talking about here. They are basically adjoining units. These are clearly not duplexes in the traditional sense that you would think that one person owns, they lease them out, clear. That is not what's been done, and you're looking at the picture for the types of units that have been built by our applicant in this case. The applicant builder here is Frank Batson. He's had a 30 to 40-year history in this area, extremely well regarded, well respected. His product is very superior. These units are going to be priced in the 275 to 350,000 unit per each side. Now, I ask you to also consider that with respect to these units, if you'll look at the pictures and look at the type of quality that we're talking about, it's the type of housing that's needed in this area. The applicant will address the commission in just a moment and address to you the type and neighborhoods they've built in out there and what type of receptivity they have had. I'd also ask that as was commented by the councilman, we are clearly willing to put in the restrictive covenants that the units cannot be rented out. I want to say up front that's sometimes a very difficult enforceability issue, but because of the age of units that we're attracting here, the residents, the lack of school input, we have no problem in saying that is something we would put in the CCRs. The councilman asked us for that earlier today. We made that commitment. The other thing I'll comment is if you look at this plan, there's only 15% required for open space. This plan's got 40% green space. That's a huge difference, and it's done because of the type of housing that we're proposing here. The client can do the base zoning and allowing basically 92 units with very little open space, very little green space. This is a very creative plan, been well received in the community in a neighborhood which is very close to this one. With respect to the client's reputation, it ought to mean something it has to the district council person. So I'm going to ask at the 2 minutes for rebuttal that, again, I ask the commission to consider the applicant's request. All the architectural appointments which were mentioned by the staff, we'd agree to every one of those. They talked about how the garages would face, what the elevations would be. We've conceded on every one of those things. Not only conceded, we supported them because we felt it made a better product for us. So we've been on the same page with the staff, the same page with every other department, other than these two conditions. But a $700,000 commitment, which gets us to a road that's not at public standards, does not make any sense in our opinion. And secondly, limiting the number of double units, if you will, to 15, again, makes no sense, and it's not what the community is looking for. Thank you for your courtesies.
Good afternoon. My name is Frank Batson. I reside at 152 Spring Valley Road. In the 40-year history of our building company, Frank Batson Homes, we've had an opportunity to develop a number of communities throughout the Hermitage area. There are two communities that we have developed that are comparable to the ones that we're suggesting here today, to the one we're suggesting, the villas of 7 Point. Stoner's Glen is on Andrew Jackson Parkway. It was 100 units of attached. We completed that in 2004. Also, Bridgewater, which is a 300-unit PUD, there was 100 units of that attached. Matter of fact, the pictures that y'all are looking at are photos of that complex. We completed that project in 2014. There's an indisputable point or demand for active adult communities. And the staff making reference to these units as being duplexes, if you look at just strictly the definition, they're right. But we'd like to think more of these units as being attached homes because as you think about these homes are 5,000 square feet under roof, heated and cooled, 2-car garages on both sides. They have 4-sided brick, many of which have covered back porches, multiple upgrades. In none of these 200 units were there any rentals, and there's typically a waiting list to get into these communities. We did have a couple of community meetings, one of which was set up by the HOA at 7 Points. The other one, there was a group of neighbors that wanted to have the meeting. So what we gathered from those meetings, in which Steve Glover, our councilman, was also there, what we gathered from these meetings was the fact that, as in all sites, most people would prefer that the 32 acres remain open, not built upon. It's currently zoned RS-15. Y'all are here every week. Y'all know that Nashville is booming, so it's a case of where somebody is going to develop this. There was a pretty general consensus among the neighbors that if we would develop this SP and do these type units, and they knew they would have some input because the units they're living in 7 Points, all 200 of them, we built them. So there is a relationship there. They would say that most of them would say they'd rather take a chance, again, on these units, knowing that they would be nice, than an unknown entity that come in and could build without any regards to the current restrictive covenants, anything about four-sided brick. They would have no input, neither would the council, because it's, or rather the planning commission, because it's already been zoned. A couple of 3 things quickly. Why there's proposal, why there's an advantage to the community. One is, Tom has already pointed out the open space. 15% is required, but when you go to 40%, there's just so much more you can do. You can create, obviously, more buffer zones to the existing single family. You can also do that with these units. Dealing with your facilities, such as your stormwater abatement, all of those things, with more land to do that with, then obviously that works better. Second thing, it's the fact the school situation out there. Ruby Majors now is running over, putting out portables. In these 2 communities, there are no children in either of these communities because these are active adults. There are no children, so it has no effect on the school. The next thing that y'all hear on a regular basis is traffic. Because of the fact that the traffic in this case, where there's active adults, the movement of that traffic does not happen at peak times, and so again, these are some of the advantages.
That's in your presentation.
It does.
You'll have 2 minutes for rebuttal. So, anyone in the audience wishing to speak in support, please come forward, sir.
My name is Danny Yates. I live in the meadows of 7 Points of Frank Batson community, 2227 Point Circle. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my family, and I do not represent the entire neighborhood. I'm in favor of Frank Batson proposed zoning change from RS-15 to SPR and the construction of the villas of the meadows of 7 Points because of his lifelong, solid reputation as a community leader and honest businessman. There's plenty of evidence of well-built, well-planned, well-maintained, and safe communities in Hermitage and beyond that are directly linked to Frank Batson. Mr. Batson and his staff are responsible for generating millions of Davidson County property tax dollars over the past 40 years. I'm in favor of the individually owned villas that Mr. Batson is proposing to build because they're very similar to the well-built, well-maintained, and safe, prestigious Bridgewater neighborhood on John Hager Road, just about a mile from the site he plans to build on. I'm not in favor of a mix of single-family homes and duplexes that could be used as rental property by absentee landlords, and I'm not in favor of the connectivity to Smotherman except for construction traffic. Mr. Batson and his staff have already done more than what the law requires of them. They've met with, they followed a chain of command, a meeting, and board members of the Meadows of 7 Points HOA. They had an open meeting with the Hermitage Police Department precinct. They met with Councilman District 12 Steve Glover, and they attended meetings that they didn't have to attend. According to the Tennessean article this past Sunday, Middle Tennessee is receiving national attention all around the country because it's a destination that people like to come to retire, among other things. There's about 85 people moving to Nashville and Middle Tennessee every day. In 1969, the Rolling Stones said, "You can't always get what you want."
Thank you, sir.
They were right.
Any others wishing to speak in support? So I don't allow you 2 minutes, that's the rules.
But if you try sometime, you just might get what you need. My name is Sharon Yates. I live at 2220 7 Point Circle, Meadows of 7 Points, a Frank Batson community. My current residents will be impacted by this proposed development. 8 years ago, when my husband and I prepared to build our current home, the first thing we did was go online and see where Batson Homes had an ongoing development. During the approximate 6 months that it took to build our home, we experienced what it meant to work with Frank Batson home builders. We were not disappointed. Just as we did, buyers seek out his product. As experienced through the mail quite frequently, realtors use his name as a selling point. I'm here today in support of the zoning change without conditions that would allow Frank Batson Homes to build up to 86 individually owned units. I'm not in favor of a mixed single-family home and duplex development. I would be less than truthful if I said to you that I'm excited about the additional traffic and construction activity. What I can get behind and be encouraged about is what another Frank Batson community will mean for our area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jean Walker. I live at 1234 Chickadee Circle in Bridgewater Villas. I think I can speak to this topic very well, as I was a property manager, had my own management company, managed homeowners associations for about 50 years. So I've seen all the changes in real estate over the years. Of the 98 villas that are built in Bridgewater, there's 1 unit rented today. There has only been 1 unit rented in the existence of that. The Homeowners Association was turned over to the board in November 2011. We sold our home on Old Hickory Lake in March of 2011 and began looking for a place to move, and we wanted to move where it was aesthetically pleasing, well-maintained. And in searching all of Mount Juliet and Hermitage, we settled on Bridgewater because it was well manicured. The homes are, my 98 homeowners would be appalled if they were referred to as duplexes. We never know our neighbors next door. You can pick out what you want to make your home pleasing to you. We have a good association. We take care of one another, and it's one of the best communities to live in Nashville. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Doug Morrison. I live at 2236 7 Point Circle, which is the street that will be the main entrance to this new development. And one thing that was pointed out was Bridgewater, which the pictures you saw, had a ratio of 2 to 1 of multifamily to single family. And this addition to, I say it looks like an addition to our neighborhood. They actually use the streets that run through our neighborhood. And so with this being built as all multi-family, as it's proposed, it would bring that same ratio, just like Bridgewater, 2 to 1, with our existing Meadows of 7 Point subdivision and the Villas of 7 Point subdivision. The other part is the Smotherman Lane, which was a private road that for some reason or other Public Works decided to help these people and pave it. It's not a sufficient road for any kind of traffic coming in and out of this subdivision. I do believe, and I asked and was pointed out, that Mr. Batson had provided a emergency vehicle entrance and exit off of Smotherman. So it is not just a one-way for emergency vehicles, but it would be just one way for those occupants of this villas. But I live in this subdivision. I like Mr. Batson's home I live in. I think this will improve the value of my home and my neighborhood. And I'd ask that you vote, okay, that you approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others wishing to speak in support? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
My name's Danny Bundren, and I submitted a letter last night that you all should have, so I won't dwell on all those points. My point is, this is not an issue about who builds a better house or who has the great reputation of building. This is an issue about changing the dynamics of a neighborhood. Our neighborhood right now, when we moved in 2008, kids could play even in the street. I mean, it was just a calm, quiet neighborhood, bikers and people walking. Now it's become a cut through with the Lakeside Meadows traffic coming right through the neighborhood. This development right here, there's only one point of access and it's right through our neighborhood. So that's the objection that I have, because again, it's going to tax the infrastructure that we already have within the neighborhood. The key differentiation between Bridgewater that needs to be pointed out is it's a separate development with a direct access to a major thoroughfare on John Hager. This is not happening in this development. Everybody's going to come through. As I look at it, I'm totally opposed to rezoning for anything other than what it is now, residential housing. I will applaud the staff because in their report, they understood the infrastructure issues, school, traffic, and they tried to address those with the two keys, making it more making it more residential, which they did, and having another access point to a major thoroughfare. So before this is approved, there needs to be another access to a main thoroughfare. So for those reasons, I totally oppose it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. And members of the commission. I am Fred Hicks. I'm a residential property owner of 5569 South New Hope Road for 32 years. You might say I'm the next door neighbor to this proposed project. I border the property some 560, 570 feet on the westerly side. This area of Hermitage is unique to Nashville, as it has 3 public access areas to Percy Lake, and it's enjoyed by many Nashvillians. We've got our share of wildlife out there also. Lots of things roam around. Many of us have owned what I call rural or country estates, 5 acres or more, with a residential home back before we had city water, back before we had city sewers. That's the way this area got developed out. I would like to see this area go forward as a residential community, not a developed out like Smith Springs Road area with spot zoning for apartments, condominiums, strip retail businesses, duplexes, gas stations. Other rural areas of Nashville have developed out as a residential single-family homes like Brentwood, Davidson County. They've held true to their community plan, like Meadows of 7 Points. The Meadows, it's some 6 to 8 years old. There's over 200 family homes in there. And it's just as pristine today as it was the day that construction was finished. From John Hager Road south, the zoning is SR 15. This active senior living 2-family home concept that we talk about, or we're hearing about, it's a current day fad. Those seniors 5 and 10 years from now, they're not going to be as active. They're again going to want to sell their property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Patty Lee. I live at 4141 Smotherman Lane, and I've lived there since 1986. I object to him using Smotherman Lane as a construction entrance to go in and out. Several years ago, I had grandchild hit by a car on that road. It's a very, very small road. It can't take dump trucks or lumber trucks or anything like that. And also, I object to not necessarily the duplexes, but the duplexes being able to be rented out. And that's it.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tina Lane, and I live at 4156 Smotherman Lane, and I'm opposed to this plan, mainly for the through traffic they want to put on Smotherman Lane, whether it be construction, emergency vehicles. I'm concerned about the blasting so close to my home. Just several issues. Duplexes mainly is my main concern because eventually they're going to be sold off to realtors and investors for rentals. And that's my concern because we won't know who's in our neighborhood now. On Smotherman Lane, we have 7 homes, 2 of which are rentals, which they're going to own that too. So that's my main concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Robert Lee. I live on 4141 Smotherman Lane. And Smotherman Lane, the way it's built right now, to have any kind of construction access or any egress from this particular subdivision is a death trap. The road comes down and narrows down to 21.4 feet. There's no way for 2 lumber trucks, there's no way for 2 concrete trucks to pass at the same time. When you get to the end of Smotherman Lane and you get to Old Stewart's Ferry, there's no line of sight almost whatsoever. 50 feet max, maybe 25 most places. There can't not, it says conditional approval unless he comes to Smotherman Lane. The only thing it's going to do is come to Smotherman Lane is kill people. So I'm against any traffic, construction, or residential traffic, even the emergency road. I could imagine an ambulance coming out the emergency exit, just smacking right into a car. There's nothing out there. It's a relic, and there's no way for people to use the road. There's only 4 families on that road now, and to bring these people into Smotherman Lane would be suicide. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name's Sylvia Hicks, and I'm going to finish what my husband started. We feel that 5 or 10 years from now, these duplexes, and I am going to call them duplexes, will be back on the market for resale to allow for investment ownership, thus rental property. We have 2 such rental duplex areas north of John Hager Road already, Misty Cape Cove and Hunters Point. These are mainly total rental units, and we are not proud of them at all. Just a side note, the smell of sewer gas in areas of Meadows of 7 Points is an ongoing problem. We have 3 other single-family residential projects and a new elementary school, which are overcrowded. I realize they're building onto Ruby Major, but there's no guarantee, again, that this would stay a so-called senior living area. Maybe we should be looking for a moratorium on construction for the area until Metro has the time and funding for improvements to various sewage lift stations in the area, as well as the water lines. Smotherman Lane is not a dedicated city street, but a public-private road. Development of the area is okay. We would like to hold the line on single-family homes for this area. I also have a concern about blasting. Our home has been damaged on 2 separate occasions at a great cost to us and our insurance company for damage to our home with cracks and foundation. And the pre-blast survey means nothing because we had that done on our home and the construction company said it was just due to settling cracks, which was absolutely not true. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Yes, my name's Bobby Lane. I live at 4156 Smotherman Lane. I'm really concerned with the construction traffic going up and down our road too. It's very narrow. I think any kind of construction traffic would really demolish the road pretty bad. And like some of my neighbors said, we do have a lot of wildlife in the area. Me and my wife looked in this neighborhood for 3 years for a home. I honestly bought my home because it's country. I can deer hunt in my yard. I can't deer hunt with people walking up and down the road. I'm not going, some of you might not like it, but I'm not going to hide it. But I am opposed against this, and I hope you vote against Smotherman Lane being opened anyway. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, the applicant be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal.
First, Chairman, I'll begin with the raw rebuttal, and that is the comments that were in opposition were, number one, is changing the dynamics of the neighborhood. Couldn't make our argument any clearer that you've got 32 acres that's going to be developed at some point. The current zoning at RS-15 allows 6 more units than what we're proposing. Secondly, every other comment was basically Smotherman Lane, which obviously echoes everything we've said. We're willing to commit that not only will we not connect to Smotherman Lane, but we'll do every effort to allow construction traffic to come in a different way. That's clearly 90% of what we heard here. Now, with respect to certainty, which is what I think most homeowners, most people live in a neighborhood are looking for the certainty of what's going to take place on a piece of property. There's 32 acres there. It's going to be developed. It's going to be built on. So what are they looking for? The people that came to the mic couldn't have been any clearer. You can have 92 units, no restrictive covenants, no builder pre-qualification. It's just wide open. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen versus the certainty of a known builder developer who's going to do 86 units that are the quality of what you've seen there, ranging in price from $275,000 to $350,000 per side, echoed by everybody who lives in an adjacent community that lives in those very places that you're looking at. With respect to green space, you do 92 lots out there, virtually no green space. You've got 40% green space with this. With respect to active adult, one of the people in rebuttal said, gosh, this shouldn't be done because active adult living is becoming a thing of the past. Well, I don't think so. Look at the demographics. That's becoming more and more and more in demand. So you've got a far lesser demand on the school system, far lesser demand on traffic. All the things that were argued in the comments before rebuttal were an advocacy for our position. So we'd urge you to approve what we consider the applicant's request, that is no connection to Smotherman. Secondly, that would be allowed to do the 41 double units, if you will, and the 4 singles as proposed. Thank you for your courtesies. I think the opposition made our case. Thank you.
Thank you. Declare the public hearing closed. Councilman Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I was looking at the pictures and the construction sites. It's really amazing at what I'm looking at because it's got that space. It's not crowded. The only other issue that I've heard mentioned is the traffic in and out of that place. And looking at Smotherman, I was just wondering, is there a possibility of at some point in time, an additional way to get in and out from that site? Because it seemed like it's such a good project that I would hate to see it maybe go by the wayside just because of the fact that we may have additional traffic in and out of that. So I'd like to, I can actually say I can approve this project. It looks good, but I'd like to see or hear more about the traffic going in and out of that place.
Thank you. Lillian?
Okay.
Can staff talk about the analysis regarding the connection to Smotherman Lane and what the road would support and all of that stuff?
The reason staff's requesting the east-west connection on the major collector street plan, it's a important connection through undeveloped land that has the great potential for future subdivision. In this area, kind of everything within the map that you see, there's very few connections. The majority of the subdivisions all have cul-de-sacs, dead ends, very little connectivity between them. Extending Hesse Road through would provide a connection from Earhart Road to New Hope Road, which is the important connection we're looking for. Having a connection with Smotherman Lane gives another alternative to help disperse some traffic.
A lot of the neighbors' comments were the impracticability of having the connection. Can you, talk about what the connection would look like? What would the connection be able to handle? There are people talking about like it not being able to see, and you can't have two trucks go on the road at the same time. Can you talk a little bit about that?
The existing conditions on Smotherman it is maintained by Metro. It is within right-of-way. The one portion without right-of-way is this small connection here. The minimum width is about 20 feet. I don't believe anybody from Public Works is here. In discussions with Public Works, they did not anticipate that additional right-of-way or widening would be required if there was a connection.
Okay, thank you.
Andre?
Well, while we're on that connection topic, just so I understand, until Hesse is extended, the main access is out to Earhart, is that correct? Am I seeing that right? So there's one access out to Earhart and the other one goes out to South New Hope Road to the west?
Correct.
Okay. I had some thoughts. As far as the concern over whether there were two-family houses or not, I think my understanding of if it were something or a zero lot line, if it's fee simple on both sides versus if it has a horizontal property regime, I assume that's what these are. They can be rental or not depending on what the HOA says. So I don't think that's really as much of an issue in our decision of. The staff has recommended a certain proportion, which I appreciate, but I think anything could be rental. I don't think that's if it doesn't have an HOA requirement. So that issue doesn't bother me as much. The thing that I think that there are a lot of attributes about this project, and particularly that they're keeping more green space than they have to have. Although on that note, one of the things that I thought would be interesting to consider is there are a lot of existing trees, which is what everybody is so attached to, with the undergrowth and habitat and those things. I always wonder when we say people, we learned in a ULI comment like just 2 days ago about somebody driving through saying, well, what they say when they say, oh, what a beautiful neighborhood, they really mean what beautiful trees. And I just wonder if we're going to approve this, if we could suggest that there are more of the existing trees saved instead of like the development, the pictures we saw, it was all taken, maybe that was a field that didn't have trees to begin with and they were planting trees, but this one has trees. And I was wondering if in an SP we could talk about saving existing trees in the places where they're asking for green space so that it's not just raw grass and sidewalks and pavement with a few smaller new trees added. Do we ever talk about existing trees in SPs?
We do. We've identified location of trees to be saved in SPs before.
Well, I just think this has such a rich canopy in this particular site that it might actually make for a better product and make it more attractive to the end users. Active seniors or children, whoever might be living there, or will appreciate shade. And so I would, if we are going to consider moving this forward, I'd like to put in a caveat in the SP that the staff work with the developer to save as many existing trees as we can talk about. in buffers and all these areas that they're keeping green, and even in the yards. I mean, I think the yards, it also is when we're trying to save efficient, make houses more efficient, how much air conditioning they use, the more shade cover they have. I mean, those things are all amenities if we could keep them. And so I would encourage that in the conversation with staff and the developer so that we can keep more of this beautiful tree coverage that everybody in that area is so attached to that makes it unique. That was my first reaction. I'd be happy to hear everybody else's comments.
Derek?
No comments.
Jeff?
Staff, if I understand this correctly, under the current zoning, someone can come in and build 92 units, and we wouldn't have any ability to require them to connect to Smotherman.
The total acreage of the site would allow 92 units, but that's not count streets and required right-of-way. So practically speaking, you couldn't get 92 units. You'd end up somewhere around like 79 as the maximum using a cluster lot development. And we would still review the connections against the major collector street plan, which includes the connector street from Hesse Road. So we would still be looking at that requirement.
So without a rezoning, we could still require the developer to connect to Smotherman?
Yes.
Okay. One thing that we have always strived to do over the last couple years is to encourage local developers who have great reputations, who have HOAs, to be successful versus someone coming in from out of town, buying this land, building 92 units or 79 units, not having HOAs, renting the units out. So at this point in time, I would support Mr. White's request for not connecting to Smotherman and for his density requirements, for those two conditions to be removed to promote and encourage local development.
Is that a motion?
Sure, I will move approval of staff's recommendation without the two conditions required and with Andre's condition of keeping as many trees as we can on the site and leave that up to staff to decide.
Walter, you had microphone on?
Yeah, I'm going to support Commissioner.
You have a second?
Yes, second, but I like to add a mark. Speaking of Commissioner McGuire was talking about trees. We do have a provision, don't we, Mr. Director, when we do an SP, that we have that tree unit in to help them plant trees in certain areas. I know in some of the SPs, we have that, what we call the tree group. We have a tree division where that we divide and put trees in certain locations under the SP standards.
You're talking about landscape buffers and the requirement for trees and those?
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm talking about. I know we had some requirements about putting trees in under certain conditions.
There are landscaping requirements. Generally speaking, though, those can be met with existing trees or by planting new trees. And so in some SPs, they've given, no disturb zones or preservation areas, and that's something we could work with them on the final site plan application.
Thank you. With that explanation, I do support Commissioner Haynes' motion.
Okay, we got a motion second to approve the staff, approve it, but without the staff's recommendation of the connector road and taking into consideration Andre's request about the trees and the green space. So.
Well, and also the condition that the unit mix of the staff from the staff is not what we'll accept, but it's the 41 two-family lots and the 4 single-family lots as the developer has proposed.
For the purposes of the motion, that would be conditions 1, 2, and 4 that the commission would be excluding.
Correct.
Other comments?
I just want to make one comment that the potential, from the staff's perspective of connectivity and our future connectivity, which we all support generally, that there are potential connections into future roads as they come. And so that, as commissioners, we're saying that short of Smotherman, the other connections in the future are enough to satisfy what we're trying to accomplish as far as connectivity goes. I mean, is that what we'd be approving, or why we'd be approving it? I guess I got one nod. Okay.
All right, got a motion, second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We've got a request for a short break from a couple of commissioners, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes.
Avenue. This is a request to rezone from SP to SP to permit up to 2 detached residential units on property located on Joseph Avenue east of Dickerson Pike. Staff recommends disapproval. The property is currently zoned SP and falls within the Cleveland Park McFerrin SP that permits all uses in RS5, so that would be single-family residential, as well as detached accessory dwelling units. The policy here is urban neighborhood maintenance, and the SP is not consistent with the policy, which intends to preserve the character of the existing urban neighborhood. The SP proposes a detached duplex, and while there are some existing 2-family scattered throughout the area, the predominant use is single-family detached. Now, the policy here was previously urban community center, and the SP, which is down here that was approved to the south, was under this policy. Also, previously, there was an SP to the north on this property that was approved under the urban neighborhood evolving policy. Through the Nashville Next process, the neighborhood did request for neighborhood maintenance policy to be applied to this area to preserve the character of the neighborhood. So this is a map that helps show the context in the area. As you can see, the proposed detached structures do not reflect the rhythm and spacing in the area, which is zoned SP with the standards of RS5. The plan proposes 2 detached residential units that both front Joseph Avenue. Access is limited to the alley to the rear, and parking pads are also off of the alley. The site is served by existing sidewalks and proposes sidewalk connections from the units to the public sidewalk. Also, a contextual street setback is proposed. I also need to note that this is a revised plan. The previous plan that was submitted is the one that's included with the council bill. That plan was incomplete and did not have recommendations of approval from all agencies. Sure thing.
The existing zoning, as it reads in here, and the proposed zoning reads the same. What is that?
Correct. So the existing zoning here is SP, but it's part of the Cleveland Park McFerrin SP that Councilman Davis proposed and that you approved last year. So that SP permits all uses in RS5. So that would be single-family residential on 5,000 square foot lots. The purpose of the SP was to introduce the detached accessory dwelling units, to permit those in that area. The area previously was zoned RS5. So the difference here is the SP is proposing essentially a duplex, 2-family, which is not permitted under the current SP since it only permits the RS5. No worries, good to clarify. All right, so we saw the plan, and the urban neighborhood maintenance policy requires that the SP be consistent with the character of the neighborhood. Staff finds that the proposed units are not consistent with the form, rhythm, and spacing of the neighborhood. Also, the plan's incomplete. Even the revised plan, it does not include information on building height, it has no design standards, and also it does not include all elements that are required to be on an SP per the zoning code. In conclusion, staff recommends disapproval as the proposed SP is not consistent with the urban neighborhood maintenance policy.
This item is open for public hearing. The applicant be allowed 10 minutes and keep 2 back for rebuttal if you'd like.
Good afternoon. I am Tim Mangum with Duke & Duke, the applicant on this project. Excuse me for not being organized and My wife had our third child today, so I spent last night at the hospital and all day today there and had to beg somebody to bring me a clean shirt. We would like to ask for approval, and it appears that staff has prepared documents that conditions if approved. We're fine with most of those conditions if approved. We would like to delete items 1 and items 9. No, items 1 and 5, it's, like I said, excuse me for being unorganized. I wasn't prepared for this, nor was I prepared for last night, but you have to roll with what you're dealt. So that's our only comments, and we'd be glad to, I know the staff said this was not completed. Once we got our comments back, I did forward those to my engineer and surveyor. They're like everybody else, they're just so busy. They haven't got it back to staff. But all of their comments, we do not have a problem with following those, but we would ask that items 1 and 5 in their conditions be removed so we could leave these units detached. And that's all I have.
Yeah, thank you. Any others in the audience wishing to speak in support? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Margot Chambers. I'm at 3803 Princeton, and I just wanted to comment that I object to this because I heard earlier that this applicant had moved from RS5 into SP to get a DADU, and I don't think that's the purpose of an SP. So I think there's a lot of changes going on with this application that the residents probably are not aware of, and please don't use SP this way. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, applicant, you're allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like to take it. Okay, I declare the public hearing closed. And Lily.
I think it might be helpful for staff to just repeat, I guess, the nature of the SP and the DADUs. It sounds like what the opponent just said was not necessarily what was really going on with the neighborhoods. If you could just clarify that.
Sure. The property is currently zoned SP along with a majority of this neighborhood. That SP was passed last year, and it allows single-family homes plus detached accessory dwelling units. That's the existing zoning, what the property is currently zoned today. The proposed zoning is to allow 2 detached single-family units for a total of a duplex on this one lot.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. I think that'll be helpful for people who watch it and try to understand what's going on. As far as the staff's analysis, I agree that it does not appear to be consistent with the character of the neighborhood and therefore not consistent with the policy, so I would be in favor of staff's recommendation of disapproval.
Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering, looking at the conditions, if they met the conditions, would that be closer to an approval? It'd be easier to approve?
The conditions that are included would essentially change the form to where it would appear more like a single family from the street. The condition number 1, I think it's pretty clear uses would be limited to 2 attached residential units in one structure that is designed to appear as one unit. And there are other standards that are included in those conditions that would help achieve that goal where the rhythm and spacing would be more consistent with the neighborhood.
So the applicant, if they met all of these conditions, would be closer to...
They would be closer.
To an approval.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You finished?
Excuse me?
Did you finish? I couldn't hear you. Do you have other comments?
No further comments. I was thinking that you were looking at me for a motion, but no further comments.
Okay. Jeff?
No comments. Derek?
No comments.
Andre? Motion.
I move to approve staff's recommendation of disapproval.
Second.
Motion second to approve staff recommendation of disapproval. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5.
Okay, this is a request to rezone for property located at 1436 Lishy Avenue. The request is to rezone from RS5 to SP to permit up to 3 residential units. The property is approximately 0.36 acres in size. It's located on the west side of Lishy Avenue, south of Gatewood Avenue. The property is, I said, is currently zoned RS5. Staff is recommending disapproval of the request. The current policy is T4 urban neighborhood maintenance as well as conservation. The conservation policy represents a stream that goes across, bisects the property across the front here. T4 neighborhood maintenance is intended to preserve the general character of existing urban neighborhoods, and while some change is expected to take place, efforts should be made to retain the existing character of the neighborhood. The plan is proposing 3 units, 1 detached and 2 attached. The units are proposed to be set back approximately 65 feet from Lishy Avenue. Parking for all of the units is from the alley, and there would be no access from Lishy Avenue. This diagram shows the existing building footprints that are in the area, as well as the proposed buildings overlaid with what is the conservation policy. Now, generally, the conservation policy takes into account streams and required stream buffers, and that is what makes up the conservation policy in this instance. So as you can see, the units as proposed are still within the stream buffer. Staff is recommending disapproval in that the proposal is inconsistent with the existing development pattern in the area. There is a mix of single-family and attached duplexes. The duplex units that are existing are small, single-story attached structures. The spacing of the units along the street is consistent, and introduction of 3 units on a single lot will be inconsistent with the rhythm and spacing of the existing neighborhood. Additionally, there have been no standards proposed for the buildings in regards to height or architectural standards, and not all reviewing agencies have recommended approval at this time. This shows the existing conditions of the property, and again, staff is recommending disapproval in that it is inconsistent with the T4 neighborhood maintenance policy.
Thank you. The item's open for public hearing. The applicant will be allowed 10 minutes if they would like to make a presentation.
I'm here representing Brian Speicher, the applicant on this particular item. I did have a conversation with Stormwater just a few minutes ago regarding an issue that I think we can iron out regarding the stream. But of course I can't get it ironed out tonight. So in saying that, I think I would like to have this deferred to give me time to get this resolved.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't let you go through your spiel. I should have probably just said that at the beginning, but as you were speaking, I was thinking.
It's okay. Then a request from the applicant to defer 1 meeting, 2 meetings, or?
When is your next meeting?
Next meeting will be, September 10th?
Yes, the next meeting is August 27th. However, there is a council bill pending at council. So if action is not taken tonight, either to approve or disapprove, it's deemed an approval at the council level.
Okay.
So if we were to disapprove it just to allow it to be revisited, then it would, what would happen?
It would go to 3rd reading next week, the 18th, and then 27 votes would be needed for an approval.
Could they defer it?
They could at council.
So we could disapprove it tonight, and then they could defer it at council to get it worked out?
Yes.
For future?
Yeah, actually, they can't defer it. They'd have to withdraw it.
Oh, they'd have to withdraw to then revisit the whole bill.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So if we defer it, then that's the same thing as approval for this council?
Correct.
So it'd have to be withdrawn and then come up to the next council. Instead of deferring, you withdraw.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you voted to, if you deferred it, it'd be the same as an approval. If you voted to disapprove, it would go back to council and require 27 votes. Council can take it up this next time, regardless of what you do, depending on whether you vote in favor or against it. It changes the votes. But they're not going to be able to defer it because of the timeline. And as I watched the Vice Mayor inform somebody at the last meeting, you can't defer anymore. That a deferral, it has to be a withdrawal, or you have to move the bill forward.
So the best thing for them to do is they won't come up with the next council. But if we
They want
it's
you
going to be approved. If we disapprove it, then they're going to have to go to council and probably not get approved there. So their best bet, if they want to not be heard tonight, is a withdrawal. So it's going to come up before the next council.
A withdrawal here has the same effect as the deferral because the bill is still
Withdrawal?
pending. Yes, because the bill is still pending at council, so they could take action on it at third reading and it would be considered approved.
Okay.
It would need to be withdrawn at the council
We need
level.
to go ahead and hear it tonight.
Correct.
Okay. That's just caught at this time of the council turning over, so.
I understand.
No choice.
Thank you.
Okay. So, do you have, you've got 10 minutes to make a presentation.
I would just say a couple things. Of course, Lichie Avenue is one of the main thoroughfares leading into the Cleveland Park area or out of the Cleveland Park area. And a lot of that area is severely distressed. And we personally believe that this project will help kickstart and improve Lichie Avenue in a more rapid pace than what it's going now. There is a development just south of that there's 3 units being built. I don't know if they're on one lot or two. I haven't researched that. But I do think that our project would help promote the change of Lichie Avenue.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak in support? Seeing none, anyone wish to speak in opposition?
I'm Margot Chambers at 3803 Princeton, and I would just like to recommend that you guys vote no on this because right now in any kind of RS5, you can't have dadus. And to zone from RS5 to SP, that is, again, a non-recommended use of SP. That's not why SP was created. So this applicant is just trying to use the SP to get dadu. And that should be prohibited. You shouldn't ask for that. You shouldn't allow anybody to come up and waste your time and have their time wasted too. They should just wait till the dadu overlay is put in or just vote this no. Thank you.
You want to speak?
Just to inform the commission, this is not a dadu. It's not a request for a dadu.
My name is Russ Sims. Good evening, council. And I wanted to speak in opposition to this, primarily for 2 reasons. And I don't think that this is something that we can't reconcile. But those 2 reasons really have to do with process and with precedent. From a process perspective, I don't think that we've had enough opportunity at the community level to really understand what this means. And I would hope that we can do that and that we can get there. And then from a precedent standpoint, I'm concerned that, well, let me back up for a second. What you see with respect to the distressed properties on Lichie Avenue, I've lived there for almost 15 years, so I've seen it come a long way, is a lot of a lot of good development coming through Cleveland Park and then getting right up to this point and kind of stopping and then kind of continuing on the other side somewhat. So I think where we agree is that this is a pivotal development, and yet it's not clear to me if what's currently proposed is in fact what's in the best interest of the neighborhood. I'm simply not yet convinced that it is. And you know, as a 15-year resident of the neighborhood and someone who intends to stay there for a good long while, I just want to make sure that we're doing what's in the best interest of the neighborhood. So again, I respectfully oppose, and again for the two reasons that I mentioned: process and precedent. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Yeah, I would like to just clarify, this is not a dad-do situation at all. Matter of fact, this lot, as far as the RS5 zoning goes, we have over 15,000 feet there, which per the zoning would allow for 3 structures on a 5,000-foot lot. Secondly, there was a duplex on this lot once upon a time. According to what I gathered from Metro Codes, of course, I can build a duplex on it, practically get a permit tomorrow because there was one there before. That was before we acquired the property. But again, I do think this would help start the rejuvenation process of Lishi, and the previous gentleman's correct. He lives on the other side of Lishi, and there are some nice houses over there. So I wasn't trying to degrade everybody's property, but there are some distressed properties on Lishi Avenue that we would like to see changed.
Thank you. Declare the public hearing closed. Jeff?
No comments.
Derek?
Nothing.
Andre?
I'd be happy to see the site develop, but I think I'd like to be sure that it's out of any of the waterway and that it fits the context more. I think small units are encouraged, or I would want to encourage small units because they're typically less expensive, and that might move us toward a variety of economic backgrounds in the neighborhood. But I think it can be done in a manner that's more fitting with the neighborhood. So I'd like to move disapproval, or follow the staff's recommendation of disapproval.
Second.
Million?
No comments.
Walter?
No comment.
Okay, your motion, state your motion again, just to approve, but with the staff.
Approve staff's recommendation of disapproval.
State it one more time, please.
I want to move approval of staff's recommendation, which is for disapproval.
Okay. Heard the motion, you made the second. All in favor? Derek? Aye.
He seconded there.
Oh, he did, okay. I heard it from that end. I was looking the other way. Okay, motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, ready for item number 9.
Good evening, Commissioners. Brett Thomas for Metro Planning. Item 9 is a text amendment related to the transfer of development rights. In March 2007, Metro Council adopted first ordinance permitting the transfer of development rights, which is defined as undeveloped square footage. The ordinance was specific to downtown as it was facing significant development pressure. Metro Nashville has numerous historically significant properties outside of the downtown code now facing similar development pressure. The bill proposes to permit the transfer of undeveloped square footage from sending to receiving sites. Sending sites are properties outside of the DTC that are identified by Metro Historical Commission as listed or eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places, or contributing property within a local historic overlay. In addition, the property must demonstrate excellent preservation or have a Metro-approved plan to restore the historic property. Receiving sites are defined as property within the Urban Services District having frontage on an arterial or collector street or is otherwise approved by special exception in appropriate policy areas as determined by the Planning Department. Staff is proposing a substitute ordinance which proposes to exclude single-family and two-family structures in R, RS, RA, and RSA zoning districts from eligibility as sending sites. In addition, the substitute ordinance clarifies sending sites listed in the National Register of Historic Places or eligible for listing must be contributing properties. Staff recommends approval of the staff proposed substitute ordinance.
Council Lady Allen, this is your proposal, so you have the floor.
Thank you, Commissioners. This existed as a tool in the downtown code area, and in the last update of the downtown code, it was deleted, and I feel like it's a valuable tool for historic preservation for the rest of Nashville, so I asked the planning staff to work with me in recreating it to apply to the area outside the downtown code, and I think they've worked hard to come up with something that I believe will be a good tool. You've heard how it's supposed to work. Nashville has historic overlays that protect many of our historic properties, but there's still an awful lot of properties that are significant historic structures that are not protected by any kind of overlay. And as you probably know, being listed on the Historic Register does not convey any type of protection whatsoever. And often there are owners of historic properties who feel like that they are penalized because they own a historic property and therefore they would not be able to develop it because of the historic guidelines that would direct how that would happen. And so rather than present that as a negative to own a historic property, this presents an opportunity for owning a historic property to be an economic benefit to that owner. There are other economic benefits that they could also take advantage of that would help them restore the property. There's state money available, their tax credits and things like this. So this could be part of a whole toolbox that hopefully would enable some of our historic structures that define the character of Nashville, that as we grow and the incredible development pressure that we're seeing on many of the parts of Nashville outside downtown, that these historic properties, rather than succumb to that development pressure, and be destroyed and make us look like Anywhere USA, that those would be able to be preserved and that the owners would be able to benefit from protecting their historic structures through the sale of their transfer development rights to other properties that are located on areas that are appropriate for further intensification. So I appreciate the work that the planning staff has done on this, and I would ask for your approval.
Okay, thank you. Anyone in the audience wish to speak in support? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
I'm Margot Chambers, 3803 Princeton Avenue, and I apologize for saying DADU instead of detached dwelling unit last item. I'm asking you now to vote approval of this tonight because it wasn't part of the Nashville Next process, and something this large shouldn't be an amendment to a brand new general plan. It should have been part of the discussion of Nashville Next. Right now, there's no public disclosure of this property right proposal, and I had to pull this off your consent agenda just to get a presentation to the public. And that's why, if it's a great idea today, this will be a great idea in 6 weeks, and I think rushing it right now is going to cause a lot of unintended consequences, much like BL 2015-1120 is doing. The questions I have off the top of my head is who is responsible for tracking the total square footage purchased? Is this a new department? There is a special exception comment made on the PowerPoint. It doesn't have to be in a historic site receiving it. I realize there might be changes to that, but because the public doesn't know about the changes, there's a lot of questions. For example, if Site A sells to Site B, following all the rules, whatever they are, and Site B sells to Site C some years later, when is the public going to know how big Site C could ever be? The public hearing on Site C could have occurred years prior to that and approving a certain square footage, and now they have extra square footage. So there's no opportunity to ensure the procedures are ever complied with, especially if this is staff approved. I request all these transfers get commissioner approval, and I understand this is necessary to protect historic properties. I'm not against that. I think that's a good idea, but I think you shouldn't harm a new mayor and a new council with something that has a lot of questions. Thank you.
Anyone else speak in opposition? Seeing none, the applicant will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I do believe this is a good property. I am willing to step back and discuss some more. I would appreciate you going ahead and approving. If it is determined that we need more time to speak, I can deal with that at the council level. But I believe this is good for planning if Secretary Sloan thinks so as well.
But doesn't this call for codes to keep up with those, the
Yes.
rights that are transferred? And they can't be transferred beyond that first transfer from the historic sending site to the receiving site, is that
I would
correct?
think that state legislation would clarify that, but I'm not sure, and I'm willing to make that clarification if that is necessary.
I feel fairly certain that that's it, that it would only go from that historic site to the receiving site, and it's not a commodity then to be transferred beyond that.
That's my understanding, but I'm not the lawyer, so I'll defer to the lawyer on that one.
And then, well, I guess that's it.
So to reiterate, codes will be keeping track of where those rights are. It's a document that will then travel with the property and will
And
be
it's
on
a
public
text
record.
change to the zoning code. This is not policy that was included in
And this
Nashville
is something
Next
that has
policy.
existed for the downtown code. It just disappeared. And so I'm just asking it to reappear to apply to the parts of downtown that are now being under development pressure.
When you say it disappeared, could you explain, help for the public what that means?
Yes,
that it
thank
did
you.
disappear?
We did just recently do an update on the downtown code, and because it has not been used in the downtown code area, planning staff felt like there were other tools that they could use for height bonuses and FAR bonuses downtown that would be more appropriate. And so they deleted section 1720-120, I think is what it was. And so I had simply asked if we could rewrite that section to now deal with the parts of Nashville that are outside downtown that are facing the same development pressures. So it's something that's been around for how long? Many years?
Maybe 15 years or maybe
2007.
2000. Okay, all right, since the
8
DTC. But this also expands that to outside of the DTC.
Correct. It did not
So that-
exist outside.
As opposed to the way that it was previously.
Correct. So it's a change, but it's not a totally new concept.
Okay, thank you. Declare the public hearing closed. And Walter?
Yeah, I think it's a good bill. I was there when they expanded the downtown code. I think it's good. I don't know exactly where all the boundaries, when you talk about the outer boundaries for preserving historic buildings and sites, I think we need to make sure we know how far out are we going from the downtown code to cover all those particular sites, and I'm hoping codes would probably do that they were maybe the responsible party for doing that. So beyond that, I think it's great tools to serve some buildings that maybe we overlooked and when we expanded the downtown code, because it's not clear in a lot of people's mind how far that expansion went out there. So let's keep it in mind.
Leon?
No comment.
Jeff?
No comments.
Derek? Andre?
Yes, I have a question. I wanted to ask the staff to talk about how the decision to limit it or exclude the single-family ones that you excluded. If you could help us understand why that choice was made.
Mostly because there's not a lot of square footage. There's not a lot of entitlements above what's on a single or two-family home. And so it's not really worth it to purchase it or sell it or apply it to another property.
Okay, because there's not much to sell.
Right.
And then just sort of for future contemplation, I guess not tonight especially, but for Berkeley and the rest of us, we've also seen in other places where, as a preservation tool, this has been used. We're thinking about for rural components that, we're trying to, on edges or places where there are some entitlements that you're really just trying to protect something from development, it can be a good tool to have these kinds of trades. And so we could look into that in the future as a different type of, expanding the type of tool that we use. So in general, I think it's a great idea.
Give me a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion second to approve. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Any comments, Walter?
No comments. I think this is my last meeting here, but it's been interesting.
Next time.
Next time? We got another meeting after this one?
Got one.
I guess I'm rushing them a little bit.
Yes.
I got somewhere to go.
We're gonna, unless you have somewhere else to be.
I got somewhere else to go.
Oh, okay.
But no comment, no. We're just wrapping up everything down the council, packing up. So it's been good. Thank you.
Lillian? No comment? Andre? Derek? Jeff?
I've got, just a reminder, sorry, to put myself on the clock there. I just remind everybody that August 29th at 9 a.m. is when the retreat is. It's the downtown library, the Civil Rights Room, so please be there. A couple other quick things. Brenda Diaz is leaving our office, unfortunately. So is Melissa, and she's already left. So we continue to lose good planners, but we'll also, I think we've already gotten an exception to hiring freeze for Brenda's position. I'm not sure that we have it submitted for Melissa's, but good news is that we are getting Brandon Burnett back. He merited an entire article in the newspaper for that, which I thought was pretty spectacular. And then I would like to introduce y'all to Emily Lamb, who will be our new legal advisor.
I'm glad to have you.
That happened because John Michael is now with the Codes Department. And Emily's a very good attorney. That would be the other reason.
Glad you cleared that.
All right. You finished?
Yes.
Is that it? Okay.